so tough?
Well, I just think in my career, I've been incredibly lucky. Like I said, I never woke up and said, oh, I want to run a beauty company. It
Right.
just wasn't what I thought I would do. And when I went into a CPG, I was fortunate. I had female managers. So even though, my first brand manager was an Indian American, and she had made the move from being a CFO in the organization to moving into marketing, which was kind of a bit of a risk. She was incredibly supportive and encouraging. I was very analytical coming out of engineering, and she was analytical, so we connected on that. She's incredibly encouraging, and I had female after female manager. LGBTQ female managers that were bold and proud, and so that was a help. So I've been fortunate in that. But more importantly, I think in terms of the times now, what I've learned is what I shared with you early, just how important it is to have authentic, purpose-driven leadership. That it's not all about perfection, it's about being human and connected. And I try to lean into that every day, sometimes with success, sometimes not with success, because there's
Right.
so much going on that that again, I armor myself up for. I got to get through this. And sometimes find naturally I don't want to connect, but that made a difference for me. People that, connected with me humanly. And so I think that's how we all make a difference together, especially in these crazy times. I'm
Oh
seeing
yeah.
more of us come together than ever before because we're all outraged by the loss of life,
And the mix
outside
of
of a
people that are
political issue.
and the mix of people that are coming together. This isn't just one community. This is a lot of communities coming together to fight these injustices and fight. And so I think that's also, you mentioned that yesterday, that you'd like to see everybody, all walks of life coming together to fight this together, because it's really a human issue.
And it's
And
happening. And it's
it
happening. I
is.
mean, that's what I've been in so many conversations where we've all been moved to tears. And
Yep.
those conversations have been conversations in Black and brown communities, and there have been conversations where it's predominantly, white communities, and people are moved. And, tragic events have happened since history. Slavery
Yeah.
is a 400-year-old institution. So these issues we have, they don't get fixed overnight. Rodney King was 30 years ago. And there's, Trayvon Martin, and over and over and over. But this
Crazy.
George Floyd sacrificed
Yeah.
his life for people to see that he was truly defenseless. And that is a human issue. It's not a political issue. It's not a race issue. And all of
Exactly.
us as humans are coming together. And I've been moved by people owning this is not a problem for Black and brown people.
And not just people, like
solve
individuals, but actually companies. I mean, if you're not for something, that's probably not good enough. And that's why I think purpose is so important. I think Unilever has a long history of that. Obviously, they had a long history of it. If back in the 90s, they were having diversity inclusion discussions, that they were hiring openly, LGBT, Q people, that they were managers and in positions of power. And I think that's brilliant. Just how important do you think it is that companies step up during this period of time, not just Unilever, but in general, and the impact that really has on sales and developing relationships with the consumers they service? Love to kind of hear, and potentially even their stock price. I think doing the right thing is now actually driving better performance than their cohorts, both in product sales, but also the way their stocks are being consumed.
Yeah, I believe it's absolutely essential. And it needs to be for the right reason, not for looking good, but for out of a commitment to make a real difference. And that is personally why I joined Unilever. And transition between joining Unilever, having retired from one company, I was really looking at my next chapter on how I could make a difference, not just, sell the next beauty product,
Right.
and how I could really make a difference. And I didn't know that there would be a for-profit company that was really committed to make a difference. It was by accident. Even though I was familiar with Unilever, I just thought it was corporate propaganda. And then in my networking, I learned that it was deep in the DNA, the belief that the purpose of business is to do good, which was incredibly inspiring. And it starts with the purpose of making sustainable living commonplace, which is how the company was founded in another pandemic, a hygiene pandemic, you know, nearly a century ago, where not having access to washing was hurting health. And that's where Sir Unilever founded the company. And so real passion under Paul Pullman's leadership and now under Alan Jope's leadership. So real commitment to do and not just say. And so I thought, what a great opportunity to run a beauty business and make a difference. And that is what we've been able to do. And it's out of a commitment to do. And, the introduction highlighted some of those things, but there's so much. And in the beauty business that I run, our business strategy is called Sustainable Beauty with Impact. And it is be the beauty company that has the most impact on people, on communities, and on the planet. And we wire our model around that. And we believe that is our commitment. And we also know that people care about that more and more than ever today. The latest Edelman Trust Barometer survey showed that 81% of people want to have confidence they can trust the brands that they are buying to do what's right. So it is important for business to use our scale for good. And it's important for business because it's good for business because people only want to buy into brands that make a difference. And that's not why I do this, not just because it's good for business. I do it because it's good for the world. And I'm thrilled that people are calling on business for more. And we just feed that cycle. And I think when businesses profit, communities should profit. And one of the brands I run is in the portfolio is Shea Moisture, and they run a community commerce model. And so what the community commerce model is the more you buy, the more investment there is in the community. And the Shea Cooperatives are in Ghana, and the New Voices Fund, $100 million fund invested in women of color. So you buy the product, it feeds into the community. And I think so we take action against injustice and the issues that are happening, but we also empower and invest in the communities beyond social justice. Economic empowerment and equity, I believe, is our obligation.
And, were there specific things, I know you've been working a lot of these purposeful, programs for a long period of time. Can you dive a little bit deeper into maybe some of the things that came out of the reaction to the pandemic or any of the number of issues that have happened, recently, and how, is it really hard to kind of pivot and quickly respond and do something, purposeful, or do you always just really do just the longer term things that you've been planning for months or years?
You have to respond. Dove is truly committed to beauty inclusivity in the world. And it started more than a decade ago with a campaign for real beauty. It's continued to evolve. And, we've been championing for the end of hair discrimination, as he mentioned, through the Crown Act and the Crown Coalition. But in that, so many ways, the celebration of beauty, when the COVID crisis, looking at the selfless acts of the frontliners and the medical frontliners in particular, the nurses, the doctors, the whole ecosystem, putting their lives on the line to take care of us. We, in less than a week, I have a business in the US and a business in Canada. Coming out of the Canadian team, looked at this and said, let's celebrate the beauty and courage. And we did Courage is Beautiful, but more important, what can we do to help them? And early in the time, not having PPE was a real issue. So we invested our $2 million into direct relief, but in particular for PPE for those on the front line. So your question is it easy to pivot? It starts when you are a brand of purpose. You know what your purpose and your commitment is. You see the opportunities in the world when they arise to make that difference. And that's the strongest way to pivot, because it doesn't take, what you're committed to. So it's more about what's that opportunity and how do you act? And so there are a number of examples. On Suave, we are investing in essential workers, partnering with Modest Funds. We've created Essential Workers Fund to help take care of workers who are taking care of us. Grocery, how do we buy our groceries? How do we get our packages from e-com? anything that we need, they're taking care of us. What about their needs? We have kids at home and other things. So we've created a fund. But we know Schwab is committed to everyday essentials. So that helps. And in these current times, with the racial discrimination and the violence, it's just brands taking a stance that it's not okay, and using our reach and our voice to say so, and then using our capacity to invest in organizations and programs that can do good, and then looking at ourselves and our organizations and our diversity
Right.
as well to make sure we're contributing to the equity that we are that we're standing for.
You've mentioned so a lot of these big changes have happened, and your response has been great. During this crisis, are there any things that are going to stick with you post all of this? Have there been any changes to the business model, changes to a perspective? Some people are trying to figure out, how do we go more direct to consumer, or how do we actually more feed our e-commerce big partners, like the Amazons, the Walmarts, everybody else, so they can be prepared to deal with these issues. But is there anything long-lasting impact that's going to stick with you?
I say there's a long-lasting impact. It's going to stick with us as a society, and I'll speak to what some of those are. And then there are things that will definitely stick with me personally. And in terms of the prior, there's always been this emerging trend, if you will, in holistic beauty and wellness. It is so important more than ever before, our mental well-being, and then our physical well-being extending to be more fundamental in terms of hygiene, and then preventive care in terms of immunity. Like, we see the emergence of, so we have a business at Unilever, Ollie, emergence of supplements and the growth of those. So that is going to persist. It's accelerated. The other is this contactless shopping. I think that's going to persist. People are finding solutions to not spend a lot of time in stores. So clearly that's through e-com, but it's also in neighborhood shopping, different ways of shopping, the way that we look for information. We'd already started doing multiple shopping with digital devices, et cetera, and that's been a long trend, but that's just going to accelerate, and that's going to stick. And then I think the way we connect community, while we are more distant physically, what we're experiencing is that we're coming closer in community. So think about you personally, and for me, how many people in my 30 years I hadn't talked to that I talked to because I was wondering how they were, and it was easy enough. How are you doing? Let's have a quick Zoom chat. How many virtual dinner parties have I done with families that there's no time because we're all busy? And I think that's going to stick in society, and that's going to stick with me. And then, having dinner with my family, traveling all the time, and seeing that you can get work done in ways that you can still keep community and rituals with your family. So we have dinner every night. We, together, and we cook dinner together. I cook dinner with alternate between my son and my daughter, and we listen to music together and cook. So that is also going to stick with me.
Have you felt like this is probably, speaking of people, because there's a long-lasting impact on businesses, processes, systems, but the people's the most important impact. Have you felt like this has brought the company closer together, employee to employee, manager to employee? We found that when I'm doing my morning call, my afternoon call, with my team, we always use video. We always see each other. We engage each other. But it's hard not to miss, the dog, the puppy, the child. All of a sudden, you're getting to know people at a much, much deeper human level than ever before, and we feel closer than ever. And I don't think that's going to go away. So, just curious how this actually brought you closer together, the people you serve and work with.
I would just say ditto. The level of intimacy that we're experiencing, we've never experienced in the workplace. It's pets, it's families, it's us. We're face to face, and we have a distance when we're at meetings together, and we're seeing all of it. You heard what was going on in my my house. My son runs by, mommy, mommy, mommy. So the level, and kids crying, and we hear it all. So I think there is definitely a new sense of, I don't want to say a deeper sense of intimacy in who we are as people. And isn't it joyful? Isn't it great when you're on the Zoom calls and then the kid pops in?
Yeah.
It's like the joy of that hour, if not the day,
Yeah.
but it happens frequently through the day. So I hope that humanity will continue and we don't just armor up and forget that that happens. But the other thing you were talking about beyond the intimacy and humanity is the connectivity. So my team is working in a completely different way than we used to work, right? Completely
Right.
different way. So, we started with daily stand-ups and we now are doing them 3 times a week. And I'll probably, we started with weekly town hall. So 500 town hall, we moved that to every other week. But beyond the frequency of meeting, we've jumped in really as one team, all for one and one for all. And in terms of the ability to identify the priorities and flow the resources and work to those priorities, call them agile practices, but in a different, more committed way. People not worried about their brand or their category. What does the company need? What does this person need right now? And we're continuing to work in this way. I think it's going to be very difficult for us to go back to our silos. The way we're working locally and globally, because we're all coming together on these calls, it's against not a global agenda or a local agenda, it's the agenda. And then who do we extract? And we weren't always working in that way. So the connectivity and the connectivity and working together against a common issue is something that I believe will stay. And I won't just say I believe will stay, that I will champion for that to continue in terms of the way that we will work.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Sorry, my mom is calling me. There we go.
Hi, Mom. I was thinking it was our ringer. Time up.
It is time to start moving into some other questions. I just wanted to add to what you were saying. I think that it's not enough to just focus on OKRs. It's not enough to focus just on sales. I think what this has done is actually shown us that how emotional intelligence, and which I think this has actually helped foster is more emotional intelligence, has actually had a much bigger impact on business than we necessarily thought. And I really feel like that across the board. I don't think it's distanced people. I think it actually has brought them closer together. So I think that's super important.
I love the way you say that. That was tricky. At one point I was saying what's needed now more than anything is the EQ through empathy and connectivity, but at the same time, a high degree of agility.
Yeah.
So you have the emotional capacity to connect, but it's also the physical capacity to pivot, because every week we learn something new. So our energy need, because it's on both sides, it's not like the emotional, it's both. We're doing more work, the planning, the replanning, and the changing because of how dynamic none of us know. We're writing the story.
Yeah.
So,
and also we have to fight against all of our own bias. There's a bunch of bias that builds up like, oh, we can't be productive working from home. How is this going to work? Well, we don't do that. Well, now we do. And we've been better for it. We're having, speaking for the company. So sometimes you got to check that bias at the door and be like, we're at unprecedented times. There's a whole bunch of new that's going to be coming our way, and change is always hard to take, but opening up to it, you're much better ready and available to actually pivot to what needs to happen. So I think the faster you can get rid of that internal bias or that bias in your head that says you can't do something differently, the faster you're going to actually do that thing that's really necessary. I want to just address some of the questions, just pivoting real, quickly. Some people are curious about your overall, marketing mix and channel mix, and what is actually really been most important at this time. So, the mix between, media and then your channel partners, Amazon, the Walmarts. How has this actually impacted the way that you're actually leaning into these relationships and into these channels?
So there were 2 parts of this question. One is about leaning into the relationship, and then the other was leaning into the channel. So the earlier thing I talked about in terms of connectivity is also very, very important right now as we're all learning and pivoting together. So staying close is critical. So with our colleagues that are at retail, the buyers, et cetera, to understand shopping behavior, consuming behavior, I always start from how can we help? How can we be of service? So staying connected to understand how we can serve our retail partners and how we can serve people who are in need right now. So we're doing that more than ever. Okay, so that's one.
Right.
Two, as you talk about what I think underneath the question are the channel dynamics and how they're shifting. We have some retail that have been closed. We have some retail that have exploded, like e-com. We have some retail that we've seen also explode, like grocery, because food is the currency. So we've seen that. And we've seen, just mixture in the retail landscape between the mass players and how they're managing based on the traffic environment. So we're trying to manage that in real time to make sure we are of service to the breadth of our retailers, that our offerings are appropriate because they were designed for one mix and the mix looks different. So that's another area that we're changing. So I guess the short answer would be we are leaning into the changes because we want to be of service, right? But also not putting our head down, saying that how the market looks today is how it's going to look a month from now or 2 months from now. So we're leaning into the changes, but also anticipating what's to come.
Right. We are just about, and I think we're done just in a couple minutes. I want to end on a fun note, and I did read through the questions. I think we addressed a lot of these questions. A lot of people were curious about how your management style may have morphed over time. I think we kind of covered off on much about how you're managing, through this. But just want to leave on kind of a fun note. We're spending a lot of time at home. How are you passing the time? TV shows, movies, great books, awesome music. What is actually letting you, what's the creative side of your life look like when it comes to content?
That's so cool. I'm loving on social media where people talk about all the great things that they're watching and doing. I find that I'm working twice as much. And so there's not downtime. So I've got to wedge that in. So the first thing we did as a family is we watched the whole Marvel series movies. So over 20 movies, I think 23. So every night we watched them, and it was my break. I knew at a certain time because the kids would have a bedtime. So we just watched them every night. So that was amazing. And we did them in chronological order, not from when they were launched, but when they unfolded. So that was super, super fun. The other thing that my daughter and I love is Killing Eve. And I mentioned this to you. So we are going to watch season 3 together. And then I mentioned the cooking that we all do together. So we do that to music. So my son and I, we cook to Hamilton. And my daughter is done with it. She's like, you were ruining Hamilton for me. And it's going on Netflix in July. And please, can you stop so that I can enjoy it in July? And so we moved to Bill Withers. Bill Withers, rest in peace, passed away in the past couple months. And so we've just been jamming to Bill Withers. And so that's my release, like the cooking and the music with the kids, the dedicated times we commit together to watch series, gives me the break and time with them. So thank you for asking.
Oh, no problem. I think we're running up against time. So I just want to do a time check. I'm looking at the chat and see if that's it. But, I just wanted to thank again, everybody, all the speakers that have come in today. I think it's really important that we all come together, that we talk about, the impact on our business, our person, who we are, and learning from, the journeys of some of the best people in the industry. So thank you for being willing to open up and dive deep into a lot of these bigger issues. Thank you so much. And have a great day. Enjoy your weekend.
I really do believe we make it better together. And there's a lot of better to make these days. And, I'm inspired by the lemonade and these lemons we've been given is the community that's being created and our stance against the issues. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to have the conversation and looking forward to what we can do together.
That's awesome. I see Scott's showing up. Scott, I have 5 more minutes. Do we have 5 more minutes, Scott?
I think we're good. Yeah, I think we're good until 1:15 if you want to keep riffing. Otherwise, I can take it from here. It's up to you.
Well, I think that, I think we could actually, one of the questions that came up a little bit more because people were really interested in about how the business changes. But are there any new things coming out, from Unilever, your team, when you think of the second half of this year, SE? What are you most excited about coming out from your teams in the second half of 2020?
I would say there's two things. One, you've seen Amerca come together and rally around helping with hygiene practices because we know and we're reminded of everyday habits can actually save lives. And like many other companies, I was really proud to see the team in 3 weeks move into the hand sanitizers business because, it's hard to find sanitizers. And um, there's so very proud of that, literally in 3 weeks, like the gentleman who spoke earlier, just unbelievable. But I believe that was out of purpose. It was really out of a commitment. And a lot of what we created, we gave away. We did Suave, we did Shea Moisture, and Shea Moisture gave to underserved communities and hospitals. Suave gave to our plants as there was limited supply. And we also provided to retailers. They were having supply problems. So more of that to come and have to. The other trend that you see, and there's a lot of innovation I can speak to, but the other trend you see is beauty at home. And you see beauty at home a lot in the textured hair space. And so as you look, those of us that get the data from Nielsen and IRI, you see that market is exploding because textured hair, you usually use a hair salon to take care of your hair daily, not daily, weekly, regularly, not just for cutting hair. And so we've been able to provide products and services to help with textured hair. They're being well appreciated through the brand of Shea Moisture, through Dove Amplified Textures, through Suave. So I'm very excited about those products. And then I'm very excited about the mental well-being products that we've launching. And on Dove, we've launched into bath salts and bath and body products and therapeutic products for mental well-being, I would say. And I'm appreciating how those are doing and the further difference they can make as people ease back out of home, but also want the peace of mind as they come back and retreat. So a lot of more things I can say, but those three things are top of mind.
Well, that's actually perfect. You nailed it. It's 1:15.
1:15.
So again,
Jason, it
Thank
was
you
a
so much.
pleasure engaging with you.
It was really fun getting to know you yesterday. Thank you for the prep call, and thank you for joining us today.
All right. Ciao, everyone. Stay safe.
All right. Thank
Take
you
care.
both. What a great number of examples there from SC about vulnerability and how so much of what's going on right now that we're experiencing, we're allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. Whether it's the cat creeping across the desk, the kids running across the background. Right now I've actually just got a plumber visiting because our kitchen faucet conked out. Life happens, and I think acknowledging that we are all human and all in this together will bring us along a lot faster. We've talked for a long time in the age of digital and social about the importance of being human. And I don't think it could be illustrated any more clearly than the things we're going through right now. Well, speaking of being human, I love the first line of our next guest's biography. Ann Loons is the Chief Marketing Officer of Adobe. And here's how Ann's bio reads. Ann watched too much TV as a kid. I mean, what could be more relatable than that? I think Ann and I probably grew up in the same household, if I'm not mistaken. This admission and her passion for creativity and media still drive her as Adobe's CMO and are reflected in the company's groundbreaking marketing campaigns. Now, creativity is only half of the equation. And under Ann's leadership, Adobe's marketing team has pioneered to digital, deploying a comprehensive set of digital marketing solutions, establishing an insight-driven culture by looking at data. It set the template for marketing strategic impact on business. And prior to joining Adobe, Ann spent 20 years building the Intel brand as VP of Marketing, She serves on the board of Mattel, and she's been inducted into the AMA's, that's the American Marketing Association's Hall of Fame, named as one of the most innovative and influential CMOs by Business Insider and Forbes, recognized by Adweek 50. In 2015, Ad Age named her to the Creativity 50, honoring the most creative people of the year. And here's a little secret. If Anne were not at Adobe, she'd be a roadie for a band. Anne, welcome to the show. Anne's on mute. Let's unmute Anne. There you are, Anne. Welcome.
Welcome.
Excellent.
In typical fashion, audio and video were not on, and so hopefully now you can see me. Here I am. Thanks for having me.
There you are, Anne. I see your smiling face. Good to see you. And full disclosure here, I am part of the Adobe Insiders team, so
thank you.
An honor to be here with you.
Perfect. Thanks for having me, guys. Happy Friday.
And joining Anne to have a fireside chat is Dan Slivjanowski. Dan, I really apologize. I actually have some Polish heritage in my family, so I should be able to do better than that. Dan Slivjanowski is responsible for Double Verify, the brand globally, and he oversees the company product and all company and product marketing, and all the sales empowerment efforts. And prior to joining Double Verify, Dan was COO and CMO at Rhythm One, which was acquired by Tremor Media. There he helped transform the company into a leading independent programmatic platform for video and connected TV. Dan brings over 20 years of senior operating strategy and marketing experience to his role as CMO at Double Verify. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And I will get out of your way and let the two of you take it from here.
Super. All right. I'll take over to begin. So again, my name is Dan Slivjanowski. I'm CMO of Double Verify. Double Verify powers media quality and performance for some of the world's largest brands. I'm delighted to moderate today's session with Anne Lunis, and not to be redundant, Anne is Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer of Adobe. And in her role, Anne is responsible for all of Adobe's marketing and communications efforts worldwide. This means she drives the company's positioning, brand strategy, marketing campaigns, all communications, customer insights, field marketing efforts, and last but not least, corporate social responsibility. As a backdrop to our topic today, the world is going through a difficult time. The current health crisis is an unprecedented event. It's affecting the lives of people everywhere. And here at home, we're further grappling with the real issues of racial equality and justice. So with that backdrop, and I'd love to delve a little bit into Adobe's purpose-driven marketing efforts during this time of crisis. And to begin, what are some of the current health crisis impacts to your business, and how is Adobe pivoting to address these challenges?
First off, good morning. And I just wanted to start off with an acknowledgement of the terrible issues that are going now and the pain that the Black community is going through. And I was just on a call with the leadership team, my boss, CEO, Shantanu Narayan, and my peers. And, you know, we really are discouraged by what's happening, but we're hopeful that we'll be able to do something certainly at our company, because diversity, inclusion, equality, intolerance are things that we just will not stand for. So I wanted to just start off because that's something that is really painful right now. In terms of COVID, which of course has been the context for this time, I think the first part of the Adobe response was really to protect our employees. I think every company was in the same situation. We immediately sent all of our employees home, and they are still working from home to ensure that they're safe. I think one of the things that we've really done for our employees is provided them with a lot of flexibility, because people are really struggling right now. If you have children at home that are not in school, you're challenged. If you have elderly parents, as I do, I'm very challenged. If you have, a situation where you live alone, you're challenged. And so job one is to help employees with flexibility. We set up a work from home fund to provide all of our employees $500 to set up their workplace, whether it's a new chair or a monitor, so that they can work effectively. But flexibility is critical. In terms of our business, I think we're very fortunate and blessed to be in the software business and the cloud software business, and to have three categories of products that are particularly relevant during this time. Creative products, where we're in a leadership position. People want to be using creative products and be creative during this time. In fact, we've seen a surge in terms of traffic and consideration of our products among pretty much every group that we serve. What we're doing to support students in particular, that's a huge focus area for us. We provisioned 30 million students in the United States with free access to Creative Cloud while they're at home. These are largely in underserved communities where they may not have access outside of their schools. We're providing them with tutorials and curricula. We have a weekly drawing class. We are doing all kinds of things. We have a coloring book that we are publishing every week online for kids to be able to draw. In terms of our Acrobat business, everybody needs to work digitally. And so we have provision and extension in terms of trials for our products. Again, we've seen a lot of demand for Acrobat PDF and our electronic signatures product. And then on the Experience Cloud, which is essentially setting you up to drive a digital business, analytics for your website or your web applications, as well as content management to build a site, commerce capability. Everyone has to build a web capability today. If you're working remotely, you're buying remotely. And so our business is doing well, but again, our number one priority is employees and our customers.
I love it. That's amazing activity, and you did it so quickly. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the arc that Adobe went through? So COVID happened. There was an impact through the industry, through the world, etc. How did Adobe pause, recraft its creative, its messaging, its approach to media, its advocacy efforts? We'd love to hear that narrative.
Yeah, the first thing we did was essentially stop all advertising. Mm-hmm. And the major focus area was our website, adobe.com. We get 11 billion unique visitors per month. That is the place all of our customers across all of the segments I described go. And so we set up a COVID section of the site so that people could go and understand what we were doing in various areas, certainly along the community front, but also from specific products. What do I do if I'm using Adobe Sign and I would like an extension of my trial? How can I learn how to use your video product because I really want to make videos during this time? So really descriptive information on each of the product categories and how we could help. And in addition to all the community efforts that we were doing. So once we decided that we could start evaluating our creative, we pulled a bunch of campaigns that didn't seem appropriate for the time. Because tone, sensitivity, all of that is really, really important, and you can't take any risks there for your brand. And so slowly we've been, I would say, recrafting a lot of our messaging, whether it's from the communication standpoint or from our actual campaigns. I think we've done a reasonable job of applying that tone and sensitivity filter. We actually built a brand book that people should reference before they go ahead and create anything, because it's super important to be very, very sensitive during this time. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. And the brand book is specific to this time, positional and creative.
Yes.
It's great. Very deliberate. Can you talk a little bit about, recent initiatives or campaigns that Adobe is engaging in to give back? We know that advocacy is a big part of the brand and what it represents.
So we have, since our founding over 35 years ago, in the DNA of the company is giving back. Our founders, John Warnock and Chuck Geschke, immediately set up a fund for hunger and homelessness, which has been a longstanding issue in the Bay Area. And so over the past 35 years, we've really focused on giving back. So that is the nature of the company. In the COVID period in particular, we wanted, again, to protect people in our communities. And so we did local donations, but we also did some international donations because we are serving so many different markets. In India, in particular, we have thousands and thousands of employees, so we definitely focused on India and, of course, the International Red Cross. But I think what's even more significant is what employees are doing. And our employees gave 25,000 hours already of virtual volunteering to nonprofits that are important to them. We also had a 2-for-1 employee matching program. That's something that we do in cases of emergency, and employees gave almost $2 million as part of that fund. So I think we just have that culture of giving back, and there are a number of employees who are doing special projects themselves. I mentioned the drawing class. There are also employees who are doing super creative things. There was a virtual chorus put together. There's another illustrator who is doing work for creating masks. So I just think it's so inspiring and humbling to see what people are doing during this time.
Love it. It's really an example of a company, walking the talk. It's extraordinary. You covered off on briefly around some of the changes, and some of them I think we've all had to deal with. The idea that we're not going to be in offices with people. We have to manage engagement remotely. We have to manage, employees basically feeling connected to the company and clear on where we're going. How has Adobe managed and navigated employee engagement over the last few weeks? And how do you feel like you're doing?
Well, we can always do better, I think, and I think that will be the mantra. We can always do better on every front. But I think the number one thing, and we've polled a lot of our employees on how they're feeling and about our response to employees in particular, the number one thing that's important to them is communications. And they want to feel connected, not just to their own manager and peers, but to the leadership of the company. Mm-hmm. So again, my boss does regular all hands meetings. We have a chat pod so we can respond to specific questions. We do them geographically. So Japan, APAC, Europe, the United States, we do different ones. We also do one for India in particular based on time zones. I and the rest of my peers do regular all hands with our teams. And I think what we're learning is that that's probably the most important thing. People really, really want to stay connected to one another. And so we'll continue to do that. The other thing I think was the flexibility that I mentioned previously. I think we underestimated how challenged some people would be working from home. And so if you're in some of our Asian offices and you have a very small living space and you have a family, it's very, very difficult to be able to work effectively. I mentioned having kids in the household. That's also very challenging. And so I think listening to employees and having that constant open communication and transparency about what's going on has really helped.
It's incredible. Thinking forward a little bit, exciting things that are still to come. I think there's been a lot of adaptation, refactoring, adapting, etc. But if we crystal ball gaze a little bit, how do you think that creativity and innovation, which are really two hallmarks of the Adobe brand, are going to play a role in how we evolve? And what are you optimistic about as we think about the back half of the year?
So I think creativity is, it's always alive. And I think, again, more than ever, I've seen amazing work from our community. There's one effort, and we do a lot of kind of co-creation with our creative community. So most recently, we have done a project called Honor Heroes. And we asked our community to submit a piece of artwork dedicated to their personal hero, whether it is a sibling, a parent, a neighbor who has done something extraordinary during this time. We got hundreds and hundreds of submissions of beautiful work. And Jimmy Kimmel got wind of this, and he asked one of the people who had been honored by her sister, she works in a nursing care facility in Connecticut, whether she would want to come on the program. And she did. And she had a personal passion for Adam Levine, the singer, and Jimmy Kimmel got Adam Levine to come on, and she was like so excited. But I think it's these things that make me optimistic. I'm choking up because I think there's still goodness in the world. People still want to help each other. There's tremendous generosity, small and large kindness is happening. And so I'm encouraged by the glimmers of what I see from my team, from our communities across the board.
That's incredible. I wanted to ask you a personal question. So I think, we've all adapted to this time, professionally as well as personally, and you talked about the myriad scenarios that people have at home, their own private worlds and how they're coping and navigating this time. I'm curious, do you have any new guilty pleasures, any things that you've doubled down on during the time of COVID? Books to read, shows to binge, things like that?
Probably all of the above. I think the two things that really changed in my life is I started eating ice cream every single day rather than every other day. And I have found that to be slightly helpful. I also started drinking coffee again after 25 years. And that's literally also changed my perspective a bit for the positive. So those are two personal intake changes for me. But I am binge watching TV. You mentioned up front, I'm a huge TV watcher. I'm running out of things to watch. So my, kind of level of threshold in good programming is declining every day. But I think we all have to do these things to soothe ourselves.
Got it. So sugar, caffeine, and streaming video. I love it. That's the trifecta. There was one question that came from outside that I wanted to throw in. It looks like we have another minute or two. There's no doubt that there will be some fleeting as well as some permanent changes to everyone's business as a result of COVID. What do you think are some of the lasting changes that will, go on kind of post the end of this epidemic?
Well, I think working from home is going to be a permanent change. Mm-hmm. And I know at Adobe, we really did not have very many employees working from home. We believe that innovation is best kind of born from being together and riffing and all of that. Mm-hmm. I personally had never worked from home before, and mm-hmm. I am shocked by how productive I am and how close I still feel to my peers, my employees, my colleagues. And so I think that will be a lasting change, especially in certain areas where there are very long commute times.
Sure.
So I think that will be a lasting change. I think the thing that maybe all of us have missed is the ability to connect in a deeper way. And so I think, again, back to that goodness and kindness and support, I feel that that's going to hopefully stay with us, because this has been a tragic time for so many people that I believe that hopefully some of that kindness will continue in the future.
Amazing. Well, I think that's surgical. We're just about at time. So thank you so much for participating.
So much.
Truly inspiring words, and delighted to have this chat with you.
Take care and stay safe.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, well, this is Scott. I am about to turn my camera back on. I think we are in production here. Thanks so much to both of you, to Anne and to Dan. Just a reminder, we are proudly sponsored today by Cisco WebEx, the official technology partner of Brand Innovators virtual summits. They are making all of this possible, and hopefully it is something of ease for you. This is our first ever all-day summit, and I'm trying to keep my pep up. I've been at this with you, as our production team has, since 10 a.m. Eastern this morning, and bringing the energy and trying to make every session fresh. And we don't expect all of you to be here with us all day, but feel free to pop in and out when you can. Just as a reminder, my name is Scott Monty. I am your MC and host, former executive from Ford Motor Company, where for 6 years I led digital communications and social media. So it's absolutely a connection here I've had with Brand Innovators since my time with Ford, and I am delighted to continue it now. Well, we're pleased to welcome our next guests to the show. First, it's Fernando Machado, the Global Chief Marketing Officer for Burger King. Fernando is a global marketer with passion for growing brands and businesses, with more than 120 Cannes Lions, to his resume. That's pretty impressive. He's also got 16 D and Ad yellow pencils, 1 Grandy, 2 Grand Effies in North America. He's known for pushing the creative boundaries for businesses to drive growth. His focus at Burger King is infusing the brand with purpose, modernizing the design, and inspiring the organization around brand development. Prior to joining BK, Fernando worked for Unilever for 18 years. Starting as an intern, he moved up through the ranks there, working different product categories and brands. He was recognized by Adweek as a grand brand genius. I want to say that 3 times fast. In 2013 and 2018, the only double grand brand genius in Adweek's history, and also acknowledged by the Ad Club of New York as Marketer of the Year in 2017. Fernando, welcome to Brand Innovators.
It's my pleasure. It's great to be here. Great to meet you as MC. Like, you clearly make everyone feel underdressed, thanks to your bow tie. But it's a pleasure to be joining you guys.
Thank you so much. And I want to let you know that I'm not just doing this because you're here. I actually am a customer of BK. I've got just got my kids eat free for any dollar purchase. So
nice. We just launched that.
Well done. Well done. I'm following along.
I think that I will ask the question that no one will ask you. Is like, are you wearing pants or like?
Fortunately, pants are not required. Neither are bow ties, but it's part of my brand. So got to stay with stay true to my brand. Well, joining Fernando is Dave Morris, the Executive Vice President and Chief Client Officer for Viacom CBS. Dave was named EVP at Viacom in January of 2020. His focus is the company's entire portfolio of assets and delivering a unified sales strategy for the company's top accounts. Prior to that, Morris was Chief Revenue Officer for CBS Interactive, was responsible for driving the revenue strategy for CBS Interactive, as well as the management of advertising programs across the company. He's got more than 20 years of marketing, sales, and publishing experience, and joins us from CBS. Welcome.
Thank you, Scott. Happy to be here.
All right. I'll let the two of you take it from here.
Thanks. I'll kick it off. Fernando and I have not, for the audience, Fernando and I have not met before, although I'm very familiar with his work. I've seen him on panels at Cannes and other places, and really excited to get this chance to talk to you directly, but also someday meet you personally. So hopefully this will kick off that relationship. So Fernando, I thought I'd jump right into the deep end, talk a little bit about current news, and about how marketers are responding to Black Lives Matters, the movement that is sweeping this country, the anger that is going across our country right now. And I say deep end because marketers can do the absolute right thing in the messaging and help this cause and address tough issues like racism, or they can misstep and actually make things worse or damage their brand. So I'd love to know how you and your team sort of strike the right tone in your message. How do you know when to message? And what is Burger King and some of the other brands, what are they doing in this moment?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And I think that each situation and each context is different. You know, like it's funny, I was talking to someone this morning and the person asked me like if I had a brief for COVID and if I had a brief for the situation that we are facing right now. And my answer to that was like, well, we did have a brief for COVID, and I can talk about that afterwards and why that was the case. Well, I mean, in short, is we had to reassure people that we were a safe option for people to come as a restaurant, and we had to explain to people what channels were open for consumption. Delivery, takeout, right? I mean, since we had like the dining closed, there was a lot of confusion, so we had to have a brief. I think that in the case that that we are facing today, I confess to you that I felt a bit divided. You know, like I felt like as a person, I felt very angry about what was going on. You know what I mean? Like I thought it was like super disturbing and and I was angry. And to be honest with you, like I tried to channel my anger to cause an impact on the things that I think I can make an impact. You know, so at least, and people may not necessarily like share my perspective on this one, but for me, like step one as a marketeer and as a leader on the organization I'm in is to make sure that we have like proper representation of African Americans, specifically if you're talking about like the issue that we have out like in terms of racism, to have like proper representation of all minorities, but specifically in the case of African Americans in our company and in our partners, like whether they're suppliers or agencies. Um, Also, because we have like 28,000 restaurants, right? I mean, so we have like a space, an environment in the business that we are in, to make sure that we have like a policy of zero tolerance in terms of racism, harassment, intolerance in those restaurants. I honestly, I didn't feel necessarily the need to create a campaign or create advertising around that. I mean, if you turn the TV on, it's 24 hours a day of that topic, you know, so it's not like people need to awareness around it because that's the only thing we are talking on TV. So it's already out there. And I think it's time, and maybe that's a bit controversial, but I feel it's more time for action than for like a communication. You know, like at RBI, which is the company I work for, I mean, we have three brands. We have Burger King, we have Tim Hortons, and we have Popeyes. We've been in a journey to increase diversity in the company. Diversity is one of our core values. I think we've made a lot of progress on LGBTQ. We made some progress in gender diversity, but I think we are still behind when it comes to representation, specifically from African Americans. Latino, Hispanic, I think we do well. So I'm more focused on that than on advertising. You know, like if I think about walking the talk, I'm more focusing on pushing the company. And yesterday we had a board meeting and spent like the whole day with the CEO, the HR person, the regional presidents, just talking about this topic specifically. Like I want to accelerate the walk before we can talk. You know, like I see like I think it's a bad sign of our industry is like when I start to receive one proactive idea after another around racism, and the people, the companies that are sending me the ideas, like they don't have proper representation of African Americans. You know, like so I think that maybe agencies and clients should first focus on that more so than on advertising. Does that make sense?
It does, and it's been an age-old problem in our industry, whether it be on the media side, the client side, in some cases, but certainly the agency side, and something that is talked about a lot and worked on a lot. But as you said, you got to walk the walk and talk the talk. Once marketers do talk, oftentimes social media backlash is almost immediately if they misstep. Do you feel that social media is too quick to judge, too harsh, or do you think it's a really strong barometer of what's going on? And
I think I think it's the joy of the internet, right? I mean, I think that one thing I've learned over the years of working, especially for Burger King, is it doesn't really matter what you do and what your intention is. Like if you do something that stands out, there will be people who are not going to like it. You know, like so I prefer much more to act on conviction and try to be on the right side of history and be true to the positioning that we define for the brand, and then just go for it. You know, like I think if you're doing that consistently, more people will like what you're doing than dislike. But if you are the type of person who is afraid of criticism, or you are in an organization that at the first negative tweet, your CEO, we are going to print the tweet and come to your desk. It will be difficult to do anything meaningful. You know, like you will live on plain vanilla space. anything that we do, has a certain percentage of negative sentiment. There are some people who are against fast food. So it doesn't matter what I say; they will come after us. There are some people who are cynic about the work that brands can do around purpose, and they will always come against you. I think that you increase your chances of it being well received if you have a history of doing things in a certain manner, if you are consistent, and if you're acting on conviction, and if you are humble in terms of your tone of voice, and all that. We did have to do a post um, in social, and on LinkedIn, and Twitter, I think, around the fact that to make sure that people understood that our position is completely against racism. But we did that partially because of the consumers, but largely because we wanted to make sure that people internally, in my organization, understand that. At first I was more hey, let's not talk about this, let's do the work. If you want to see a change, let's be the change, instead of creating an ad or a social media post, because that's what everyone was doing. um, but then I also realized that it was important for our internal audience, that they understand our point of view. And that's why we posted. But we didn't do more than posting, than just affirming that we were all disturbed about what was going on, and that we have a zero tolerance for that.
Yeah, well, and the other crisis that is gripping not just our country, but the world is COVID-19. Of course, you're a global company. It probably impacted QSR and your restaurants quickly and as much as anyone. And I read a Harvard Business Review article just recently. It talked about the 3 stages of managing through a crisis. Stage 1 is emergency. That's high energy, team unity, clear decision making. You go in a war room, all hands on deck, and it's, for your company and even yourself, it's very energizing. The second phase is regression. Energy level drops, as this now goes into our 3rd month. The pace sputters a little bit, problems become exhausting, tempers flare, productivity can decline. That kind of describes the week I just had. And then there's recovery. Instead of handling the crisis, you're coming out of the crisis, you're reopening, you're rebuilding, you're preparing for the future, and your mandate is clear. So for you, Fernando, what stage of this are you in? What stage is your company in right now?
Yeah, we really approach this whole COVID thing by looking at the work through stages. The way we saw the stages were slightly different. I think you touched on it. We are very global business, right? I mean, we are everywhere. We have 28,000 restaurants across the globe between the 3 brands. So we saw first, some countries in Asia, our business in Asia being affected, right? We had China in total lockdown. So imagine that, you have sales, and then the next day you have 0 sales. That was China for us. And then suddenly we had to close the office in Singapore, which is the office that manages Asia Pacific for us. And then the thing spread to Europe. I think first was Italy, if I recall correctly, but then Germany, Spain, UK, we all had shutdown of restaurants, 0 sales. And then North America, South America, depending on the country you are in, you are affected slightly different, but the countries were not affected at the same time, So what we saw was we saw that there were lots of learnings that we could take from Asia, because those countries were ahead of the curve. So when China was reopening, I had countries in Europe that were still closed. Yeah, and I had countries that didn't even start to be closed yet. Yeah. So we really divided in 4 or 5 different stages, and tried to learn from each other to make sure that we were doing the right thing. I would say that we are like, as I said, like different countries, different regions may be in slightly different stage. I think that we are more towards like getting out of the of lockdown than in lockdown at the moment, right? I mean, the US is a large part of our business. It was never in total lockdown. We always had drive-through open. We always had delivery open. Depending on the state you were in, we had takeout. Now dine-in is opening in some states. In Latin America, we are still relatively closed, but it's because many of our restaurants are in malls and the mall is closed. Um, in Europe, we are starting to reopening, and in Asia, we are open. I didn't see a variation in terms of energy on the team. I think we have a very small team, and the organization is very nimble, very committed. It's like everyone acts like an owner, and we are very close to each other. You know, like it's a very informal environment. Normally, like in our office, like we don't have offices, like it's all open. CEO sits like in front of me. Everyone is like wearing jeans and shirt and t-shirts. It's really like not a formal thing. So it feels like a big startup. And maybe because of that, I think that we didn't have like a drop in terms of energy, even when results were not great. You see what I'm saying? Because like many times, like the drop in energy doesn't come from physical effort, but because you're working so hard and the results not coming, right? And people are like, oh fuck, you know, like I'm sorry for my French, but like damn, like you know, like we are killing ourselves, and the thing is not like changing the game. So we didn't go through that. Fortunately, I mean, I haven't felt going through that, and when I see the other guys, I didn't think that they went through that. But I think that it's like we are. I think that we are all a little bit more optimistic today than we were 2 weeks ago, and 2 weeks ago we were more optimistic than we were 2 weeks before. Yeah. So I think that we are starting to regain momentum. Overall, as a company, some brands kept the momentum going very strongly, like in the case of Popeyes, for instance. But the other brands are like gaining momentum, and I feel an overall optimism from people. The market is reacting really well. I mean, if you're tracking close, like the market is like had a strong gain this week in terms of like the stocks. Like the unemployment numbers were better than expected. So I think that hopefully we'll go back to more of like a positive vibe when it comes to COVID.
Got it. In times like this, you have a huge franchise network, and whether it be Black Lives Matter or the pandemic that we're in times of uncertainty, do you lean on those franchise owners? They know their communities, they know their area of expertise, or do they lean on you and come to corporate and say, "Hey, what's the guidance? What's the message here?" How does that work?
I think it works both ways. You know, like we have like all our businesses basically like franchise. We have 28,000 restaurants globally. We own 50. All the rest is franchise. And like when COVID hit, most of the franchisees, they didn't even wait for guidance in terms of knowing that we had to do something to help the community. You know, like so countries started to giving away food for first responders, volunteers, healthcare professionals. I didn't have to brief them to do that. So the guys are there, as you said, I think that they are very active on their communities, right? You need to remember, like these are businesses that, like most of our franchisees, like their parents have been franchisees, their grandparents have been franchisees. They live in that area. They know everyone by name. You know what I mean? So they feel responsible for the community, and I think that they've done a lot. I think that where we are able to provide a lot of guidance was on things like restaurant procedures. You know, like how to from technical things like, hey, this is how you install an acrylic screen on your counter to increase safety of your guest and of your crew member. Hey, this is the new procedure in terms of cleaning the restaurant because we are increasing the frequency and changing the substance that you use to clean to combat COVID-19. Hey, this is the signage you have to put in the restaurant because the new legislation is asking us to do, and you need to explain the procedures. All those things we give the guidance to franchisees in terms of advertising, same thing. In terms of like P&L, how to apply for some of the subsidies that in some countries we had, how to manage taxes in some countries. So we give guidance on those things, and franchisees are very active on other things. The reality is that we cannot, it's a very close relationship. We have them in the office and we are talking to them all the time, and we learn from them and we help them. So I think it's kind of like go both ways.
Yeah, and recently in an interview that you did, you said that during the crisis, you saw digital advertising, digital spend from Burger King and other brands stepping up, and TV coming back a little bit, a reduction in spend in TV. And then as you come out of it, you saw TV coming back and balancing out. Of course, we know the franchisees love television. In terms of that digital spend, why do you think that's more important this juncture? And as you said, TV will come back and it'll be more balanced, but why is digital taking the fore right now?
Yeah, so I think that digital has been growing year after year, like in all industries, right? Like every year we invest way more than the year before behind our brands. And every year the marketing team, including myself, are complaining that we should be investing even more, right? And I think that, like in our case specifically, the way it works is our marketing budget, including media, is a percentage of sales. Okay, it's not like on my previous life on consumer goods that like you had a budget for the year and then you may have a budget cut, but it doesn't fluctuate as much with sales. Here, the marketing budget is literally like a percentage in the contract of the franchisee, a percentage of their sales. So if I shut down dine-in the US, my sales will decline a bit. You know what I mean? Like the drive-through will compensate for that, delivery will compensate for that, takeout will compensate for that. But it probably depends on which brand you are and what are you selling and where you're based. But usually it doesn't compensate in full. Yeah. So if you look at the results, the business results for most of the fast food brands, they're all a bit down on the first half of this year. Q1 is public, and you can see that. And the predictions that the market is already talking about is still a little bit of decline on most brands on Q2, or especially like in April, May, right? So in most cases, and that's my case, I have a little bit of a smaller pot to invest, right? And then if you think about the channels that are open, delivery, right? Which like it's intrinsically more of like a digital channel because you can order on the aggregators, Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub, Postmates, among others. You can order on the BK app or the Popeyes app or the Tim Hortons app. You have drive-through, and lots of people using drive-through and paying with mobile ordering to make the transaction contactless, right? So they are more digital by nature, those channels. So it's natural that you're going to see in QSR fast food an increase in digital investment because the digital sales channels became stronger the moment you close dine-in. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So when your total investment decreases, even if you hold your previous digital spend in absolute values, in percentage that will increase, right? And most likely, lots of people probably even increase further because their sales channels became more digital because of the situation that we are in. So in my category, that's kind of like what happened. You know, like you have a strong growth of delivery, not from Burger King, but from all brands. from Burger King too, but strong growth on delivery, strong growth on drive-through. Look at the numbers from Uber Eats, the numbers from DoorDash, and you're going to see what I'm talking about. Or just think about your behavior. How much delivery have you ordered in the past 10 weeks versus your normal pace of ordering delivery at home?
Yeah, and recently you've been rolling out new ads, new creative, obviously addressing current events. You've also done some, breakthrough work. Recently, you talked about the 5 keys, the 5 fundamentals, that being criteria, creative partners, hard work, courage, and influencing. Those are your 5 mantras to the keys to your marketing. My question for you is, when you do stuff that is really out there, like the molding Whopper or other ads that push the envelope, that takes courage. Also, a lot of influence of your internal management team and then your franchisees, who tend to be conservative. So can you talk a little bit about courage and then influencing people and how you do that? You're probably a very good salesman, I take it.
Yes, out of those 5 things that you listed, I think influencing the organization is probably the most important one. I know lots of people who have courage, who have criteria, who work really hard, who have great creative partners, but they cannot get anything done. And I also know people who may not have such a great criteria, or it's not so brave, but believes on the creative partner, and it's able to influence the organization, and then manages to get a lot of work out. You know what I mean? I think being able to influence the organization is really critical if you want to do consistently great creative work. When I say consistently, it means sometimes someone may hit a jackpot or do something without presenting to anyone and get it out there. But it's much harder to do year after year, like a couple of examples in a row. And I think that to get to where we are today, especially on Burger King, it's a journey. You know what I mean? I always use that as a metaphor. In Mexico, if you go to Acapulco in Mexico, and I lived in Mexico 2 years, that's why I use this metaphor. Maybe you see those guys jumping on the cliff on the water, right? I mean, it's super high and it's super narrow, and you need to be super brave to do that jump. But they don't start their career jumping from the top of the cliff. They first jump 1 meter, then 2 meters, then 3 meters. And then suddenly they are on the top of the cliff, and then it doesn't feel as scary anymore. So our journey here, I've been with BK for 6 years now, and in the beginning, we wouldn't do 20 ideas per year. We would do 1, and it would be difficult to get it out there or get it approved. Yeah. And I think that what we did was we aligned on the strategy. We made it very clear among us on the marketing team and the leadership team, the CEO, what we are trying to accomplish, where we are heading to. We defined what were the KPIs, right? I mean, what are the targets? And then we do one little thing and measure the result. Oh, it worked. And then you go and do another one. So you start to climb that cliff, to do the jump, right? And then today, 6 years after we started the journey, we can do something like Moldy Whopper. We can do something like Whopper the Tour. We can do jumps that are from a higher point. But we started small, yeah? That's why I always tell people, I think that if you believe in creativity, the most important thing is to start. Align on the strategy. It's not creative at random. You know what I mean? It's we define the strategy that we want to sell food that's 100% clean, or free from colors, flavors, preservatives, fillers, of artificial sources, right? Great. That's defined. So I need to communicate that message. Yes. And I will communicate that message with Moldy Whopper. So it's not just, we have this idea, Moldy Whopper, let's throw it out there. So it's aligned with a strategy. And in my leadership, which is just my boss, basically the CEO, he's now much more comfortable with being uncomfortable, because we took him on that journey of jumping from the top of the cliff. So now when I present something to him, and I don't present to approve anymore, but it's more like for him to be aware of what's coming. The reaction is like, oh, that makes me uncomfortable. It's probably going to work. You know what I mean? So they already expect the idea to be to push them like out of their comfort zone.
Yeah, and speaking of jumping off that cliff or from the very top, you guys are involved in sports. You've been in the Super Bowl in past years. CBS is fortunate enough to have Super Bowl 55 next February. So I have a two-part question. One is, would you buy a spot and commit to it right here on the phone or on the Zoom or on the WebEx rather, sorry. And then two, kidding aside, you mentioned that when you put a campaign out, you're a little nervous about that campaign until you hear the feedback. The Super Bowl reaches 110 million people. They see the ad all at the same moment. So is that concern or fear multiplied by 1,000? What's your feeling about the Super Bowl as a marketing platform?
Look, I love the Super Bowl. I haven't been in the Super Bowl. I had been in the Super Bowl with one campaign only in my career. I was doing marketing for consumer goods, like the brand. We were very strong in Europe, not maybe as strong in the US. So, long story short, I've done one ad that went to the Super Bowl. But I always love the Super Bowl. I mean, Super Bowl is probably like one of the few times in the year that people are actively wanting to watch the ads, right? In fact, watching the ads is the second reason why people watch the Super Bowl. It only loses to the game. Yeah, like, and then it's like watching the ads. I think third one is the halftime show. Like there is if you Google, you know what I'm talking about. Like if you Google, you'll be able to find that. So I think it's an amazing stage for you to go and put a message out there when people want to watch the message. So it's actually cheap, right? I mean, because expensive is when you invest on something that no one wants to watch, right? I mean, that moment is like everyone wants to watch your thing. I need to align with the US team to buy an ad on the Super Bowl because like I'm the global guy, so I manage the brand globally. I don't control the media budget for the US. So if I were to commit now to air an ad on the Super Bowl next year, I would be committing with the wallet of the US guy who would get very upset with me. But I think that we should always be aiming to have content that is Super Bowl worthy. You know, like the one time we went to the Super Bowl was because we felt we had a content that was Super Bowl worthy. And we went with a 45-second ad on the Super Bowl, which was the Andy Warhol eating a Whopper film. And we loved that because we felt that was the perfect stage for that film, since Super Bowl is a very cluttered in terms of like advertising, right? It's loud. And we had something that was completely silent. And we like that stuff. We like going the opposite direction than everyone is going. I think that your question is a good reminder to me in the sense that maybe we should be preparing to have a content that's Super Bowl worthy for next year, because it's always great when you can have your brand there. Burger King has been on the Super Bowl many times. It just happened that like in the past 6 years, we were there only once, which is probably very little for a brand like Burger King.
Yeah, for sure.
You had a second part of the question that I forgot, right? One was the Super Bowl. The other part was...
the other part is, would you commit to a spot right here in the WebEx? And I think the answer
I wish I could.
Okay. And then let's talk about data for a second. I've heard you talk about data in the past. Obviously, we talk about it all the time in the media space, addressable advertising, one-to-one marketing. You guys use data all the time to inform your ads and the content of your ads and which direction you're going in. Do you feel as a creative person that we are focused too much on data, too much dependency on data and one-to-one marketing? And is mass reach media and broad messaging still important to you?
Let me ask the second question first. Like mass reach media and broad message, it still has a good importance for us because in my category is a very democratic category. You know what I mean? Like if you go to a Burger King, you're going to see people that have more money, people that have less money, men, women. Like you see all sorts of people, family, people eating alone, a student, the guys who are retired and are going there to have a coffee. So because of that, I still have a pretty good ROI on TV. And we still have a large component of our media plan that's Fox on TV because of that. That's the second part. The first part, data. Like our company is very data centric. We have we have a lot of discipline when it comes to data and analytics. We research, like I do more research on things that I invest more money. Yeah. If it's something that doesn't require a lot of money, I will research less. You see what I'm saying? So if it's something that will have like a strong media plan, probably more research. If it's something that's just a post in social media, probably less research. Yeah. I'm exaggerating a bit, but just to make the point. And I never had an issue with research. I never had an issue with data. I think that the issue I have is when you don't have conviction about the things that you're doing and you simply blindly follow what the research is telling you to do. Marketing for me is magic and logic. You need both things. Most of my competition, even when I was in consumer goods, we buy all the same research. We buy Nielsen, we buy we do Millward Brown, Big Test, we do all the same things. So we're all looking more or less on the same stuff. So you need to go beyond. You need to have someone or have a team of people who are experienced in marketing, are able to make calls that you differentiate your brand, the product, your media plan, or whatever you are working on. If you're doing research just to do exactly what research is doing, I think it's better that you get rid of your whole marketing team and bring a bunch of research people to do the work, and are going to save a lot of money. So no issue with data, no issue with research whatsoever. We probably do more research than the average company out there. I think that what we don't do, and when we do, it's not great, but what we try not to do is to simply follow blindly what's coming out of data and out of a report. We always try to turn data into insights, which requires some thinking for the marketing team. We always try to do research to make the stuff we are doing better, and not to make the decision for us on where to go to path A or path B.
So there's no Cannes Lions this year. You've won 120 of them over your career. We're taking a year off as an industry. Some people have been critical of Cannes, saying it's gotten out of control. It's too much of a boondoggle, too many people, too many media people, whatever it might be. Do you think it's a good thing that we're taking a year off, bring it back as something more creative, which is what it was meant to be? What are your thoughts on no Cannes this year, and will it come back strong next year?
No, I think it's I'm very close to the guys from Cannes. I was always a big fan of the festival. I've learned a lot of people who work with me today, either on the agency side or on my marketing team in Cannes. I met most of the best creative partners we work with in Cannes. I see Cannes as an amazing opportunity to spend a week with people that come from all sorts of places in a community that is incredibly creative. Every time I go there, I get so excited, and I spend hours. My agenda looks like completely back to back, total craziness, and I think it's great. I think that the decision to not have Cannes this year is absolutely the right thing to do, because of the safety of the people. You know what I mean? The beauty of Cannes is having lots of people mashing together, right? And I don't think that's the best idea because of COVID. So it loses its purpose. I don't think that a virtual event for Cannes would have the same impact, at least for me, of like the live event has. And I'm just looking forward to. Of course, I'm sad because I always see Khan as like it's like that brief that you give like in the middle of the year. You know, like you are swimming. I'm sorry, I thought I lost you. Like you are swimming the whole year, and then suddenly like you have the chance to breathe. So it's always great to have something to be looking for in the middle of the year. But it's absolutely like the right thing to do to postpone to next year, and hopefully next year we are going to make it like Simon and Philip Thomas. They're going to make it extra special for everyone.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, you've won a lot of awards there. You won Ad Age Market of the Year recently. Is the secret to that success the 5 fundamentals you talked about, or do you hire, train, and retain great talent that comes with you from one place to the next? So is it a combination of the people? What is the secret to your success?
I think that what I think I do well is to foster a culture that values creativity, you know, like and maybe because of that, I end up like surrounding myself with a team that's very strong. Like not all, like a very small fraction of them come from Unilever, which is where I was before. Unilever is a great marketing school. Don't get me wrong, but like I don't poach like lots of people from there. There are like 2 or 3 people that maybe have come from Unilever. Some of them it was not even a hire that I did. But I think that we have a very strong marketing team and we have very strong creative partners. You know, like, and we are the type of client that will not that will push to make big ideas happen. You know, like I think that's the thing. I think that the influencing part is really key. We touched on that before, right? I know lots of people who are very creative and want to do good work, but they can't manage to influence the organization. And I think that probably like huge part of our like the reason why we get so much recognition is the fact that we're able to get ideas out of the door, ideas that maybe elsewhere people would struggle and maybe give up. Like we never give up, you know, like and over time people start to understand that creativity matters, that creativity can be a source of competitive advantage. And now, like, if you're not doing it, the whole company, the whole organization is like, why? Where is the next one? So we, at some point in the past, we reached this tipping point. You know, like our first year, the first year that I was at Burger King, we went to Cannes, we didn't get anything. You know, second year we got, I think, like 16 lions. Third year we got 20 something. Fourth year we got 20 something. Last year we got 40. It's a journey, you know, like and I feel very fortunate to have a team of people that work in marketing for RBI who are very, very strong. I feel very fortunate that we have great partnerships with our creative agencies. And I feel very fortunate to work on a company that believes in creativity and wants to do cool stuff.
Yep, I think Scott's about to jump in and break up our conversation. Scott, is that accurate?
Yeah, you know, I hate to do it, Dave, because it sounds like you guys could go on like this all afternoon. It's hard to believe that the two of you just met, but I think it goes to show how much commonality there is in this and how much emotion there is behind it and why we're so passionate about what it is that we do as brand marketers. So thank you both for taking the time to give us that perspective.
No, it's my pleasure.
You know, just quickly, I know we're pressed on time here, so I'll just make one quick point. This notion of pausing to reflect, whether it's pausing Cannes or whether it's pausing our campaigns or whether it's simply taking some time offline every day, it's so important. You know, we're barraged with so much, and just having that time to reflect and understand the bigger impact of what it is that we're doing and where we should be expending our energies, incredibly important. Well, let's expend our energies now with Seth Solomons, the Chief Marketing Officer for Equinox. Seth has over 25 years of global experience that he brought to Equinox in strategic thinking, dynamic leadership, and history of innovative solutions, solutions that produce results. Seth has a wealth of knowledge in advertising, media, integrated marketing, data, technology, as well as a successful record as a team builder. He joined Equinox from Wonderman, where he spent 3 years as the CEO of North America. He was responsible for leading a P&L that included all the talent, clients, capabilities of the region's 26 office network. Joined with Seth is Helder Santo, Chief Client Officer from Wonderman Thompson, New York. Helder's a natural leader who's known for being high energy and passionate, and a trusted advisor with a gift for building and motivating high-performing internal teams. He's got 20 years of working with some of the most iconic brands, and he's gained extensive experience in combining creativity, data, and technology to deliver business results in partnership with his clients. In addition to being responsible for day-to-day operations, he sets the direction and growth strategy and participates in planning and acquisitions. Seth, Helder, welcome, and I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott. Helder.
You should stop moving stuff around. It's all over the microphone.
How are you?
I'm good, brother. How you doing?
Very well. Very well. Been an interesting week, to say the least.
Yeah, sure. I think, now that you mention it, although this topic is our topic is meant to be devoted towards COVID-19 and how you and Equinox Business and Brand are responding, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't first address the protests and the larger Black Lives Matter movement. I know for us at WPP, with Wonderman Thompson and all the agencies, it's resulted in a series of conversations and actions happening across the network, from donations and matching programs to doubling down on diversity and inclusion, both from a hiring and cultivating talent perspective. I'd love to hear how you have been internalizing this and what kind of conversations you've been having within your organization.
Yeah, I think the way that I would like to address this sort of personally as well as professionally. So personally, it's been a very difficult week for me, for my family, for my team. Personally, I'm outraged and saddened by the fact that we could live in a place where people don't have the same respect and rights that everybody is afforded. And I'm kind of frustrated by some of the ranting around all lives matter, because I think if all lives matter, that means that Black lives matter. And we need to shine a light on this situation. And I hope that it becomes sort of a catalyst and an inflection point for us to make real change and to really acknowledge what the situation is. As I pivot from an Equinox standpoint, I can say that it is profoundly affecting every part of our company, every person in every region. And we are going to do everything we can to use it as a lever to create some new commitments and to hold ourselves accountable to really contributing in a different way. Equinox is a very interesting company, 30 years old. And I think one of the things that you notice right away is the diversity of perspective, the diversity of our employee base, the diversity of our perspective and orientation, but it's not enough. I think what this has told us is that there's more that we can do. There's more that we can do if we listen harder, if we make some concrete commitments, and we use this as something that we move forward with in a very, very serious way. So a lot more to come from Equinox on this front. We are trying to be, as many companies are, as thoughtful as possible. There are lots and lots of people with very strong points of view inside of Equinox. We want to make sure that they are heard and that they get to contribute to what we ultimately commit to.
Yeah, I mean, I think you summarized that perfectly. I mean, I think it's been an emotional time for a lot of us, especially if those of us in Manhattan or major cities where we're seeing the protests firsthand, and in some cases participating in them as well. I think also exacerbated by the fact that we're going through a global pandemic, which is I can say without question has been the largest disruption in my life, just personally and professionally. So, and we've seen that Equinox in early May started publishing their plan to reopen the clubs. It was referred to as the Equinox Standard. Referred to things like face covering being recommended, social distancing measures are being taken on the floor, communal amenities are temporarily being closed. We've noticed that you've even started opening some clubs up in the less affected areas, like Texas and Vancouver. We'd love to hear just top line of how COVID-19 has impacted your business, and how you guys are addressing this sort of this current situation with the pandemic.
Yeah, let me take a little bit of a step back and give you a little bit of context, right? So on March 16th and 17th, we closed 106 clubs. And for all intents and purposes, we are not out of business, but we are out of touch with our members. And the first thing that we focused on as a leadership team was protecting our employees, making sure that everything that we did as it related to understanding the tax code that was going into place, understanding the economics of cash on hand, cost of operating the business, long-term, short-term. The first thing we tried to do is protect as many of our employees as possible. And very, I think, proud to say that for the majority of the last 13 or 14 weeks, we've kept almost 50+% of our employees employed. Many of our competitors furloughed 95, 98% of their employees, and we just didn't feel like that was right culturally. We're a field-based, club-based organization. These are people who show up for us every single day in every walk of the value proposition, and we needed to make sure that we protected them first. Second, we knew that we needed to stay engaged with our members. These are people that are very passionate about the lifestyle that they lead. We talk about this notion of a high performance lifestyle. These are people who, even as we close the clubs, almost 70% of our members were still showing up and showing up multiple times a week. These are people who consider themselves to be the fittest people in the world, and they're doing everything they can to stay mentally fit, to stay physically fit, and so on. So we knew that to stay close to our members, we needed to create some new engagement experiences. And the first thing that we created was a mashup of our communication teams and our content teams. We brought them together to create what we call the Daily Check-In. So the Daily Check-In is an email newsletter that goes to all of our members 7 days a week. And it's a mashup of movement content, nutrition content, regeneration content, and community or connection content. And super proud of the fact that there was no communication. We came up with this idea in week 2, and by week 3, we were communicating with all of our members. Proud to say that about 70% of our members have consumed content inside of the Daily Check-In, and almost 50% of them consume it on a daily basis. So in some respect, we've gotten closer to our members than even when they were coming into the club. The second thing, we have a very strong personal training business. and Pilates business. So we wanted to offer a virtual solution to our members. So we created a virtual personal training and Pilates business. Today, we have almost 75% of our personal trainers and coaches engaging with members in a virtual sense. And as we've seen clubs, as you mentioned, in Texas and Vancouver come back on, we see many of our members training both virtually and in real life. So it's been a very, very big success. And then the last piece was the acceleration of our digital product, Varus. And Varus is our answer to the fact that our members want to train 7 days a week. They're sort of in this no days off mentality. And Varus brings multimodal exercise and meditation and other solutions to them in one interface. So as a member, you get Varus complimentary. And what we're seeing is about 40% of our members have downloaded Varus and are actively using it. So we've got a significant amount of people consuming content on a daily basis, participating in virtual personal training and Pilates, and now consuming content with the best brands in the world. So inside of Varus, you've got Equinox for HIIT and strength classes. You've got SoulCycle for cycling. You've got Pure Yoga. You've got Precision Run, and you've got Headstrong for meditation. So when you think about a member who doesn't want any days off, we're giving them, we think, the best brands in fitness, but also in the modalities that they look forward to most.
Right. You know, it's really interesting because at least in our working day to day, we found that COVID-19 acted as like some sort of accelerator for plans that we had as an agency, right? So talking about like a distributed model, being able to pull talents to work on any client from anywhere in the country or really anywhere in the world, like the fact that we're all working remotely, that's sort of accelerated our ability to sort of pull in resources more fluidly. And it sounds like over at Equinox, you had a lot of infrastructure and strategies already in place. And not to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like COVID-19 itself acted as like almost as an accelerant to quicken the pace of adoption of some of these things that you already had planned.
Without a doubt. And it's pushed us to, I use this term, break things. It's a moment in time where you can question almost anything. You can think through sort of transformation or reinvention. One of the things that we did right out of the gate, and I think this helps to drive that type of transformation, was our leadership team, which is about 14 people, began meeting 7 days a week for the first 10 weeks. Yeah. And we were meeting 9:30 in the morning, 7 days a week, and then we were regrouping at 5:30. So the senior most people in the company were very focused on how we were going to get through the short-term issues related to financing, what we were building from a value proposition, how we were going to show up in the lives of our members. Every single part of the business was being analyzed by a senior team and then distributed very quickly out. So we were very, I would say, agile in nature, but also the things that every idea that we came up with, we were able to prioritize, move to the next gate, and ultimately bring to market very quickly in situations where we may have, to your point, taken a little bit more time, gone through more standard approvals, thought through it differently. The urgency of COVID is something that transcended all of the leadership team and every part of the company. So it was a big accelerant for a lot of change.
What can you walk us through what the world looks like from a club perspective? Because obviously, I think it's the consensus out there that until there's a vaccine, there's going to have to be sort of social distance measures being practiced in every situation, let alone clubs. What can you walk us through, like what you think that experience will be, and how it'll be different for members, and how you as a marketer are looking at those as opportunities?
Yeah, we spent probably the first 60 days of quarantine thinking through what that in-club experience will look like. We challenged, I would say, every single part of how people engage in every square foot of the club. We talked to the CDC, we talked to local and state governments, we employ 2 physicians as consultants. We talked to probably 200 or 300 vendors. We did an extraordinary amount of research to understand what could we bring, and then what should we bring, and then how would we bring it in a way that matches or takes the quality standard expected from an Equinox standpoint to a whole new level. And that's what we call, I think you alluded to it earlier, the Equinox standard.
Yeah.
So we basically decided that we are going to set the bar once again as it relates to how people engage in fitness clubs. And we are bringing temperature checks. We are asking members in certain regions where it is expected to wear face covering. We changed out all of our hand sanitizers. We are protocoling differently from a cleaning standpoint. We have social distancing inside of all of our group fitness class settings, inside of our PT engagements. So all of what we've delivered has changed every aspect of that in-club experience. And a lot of it will be, I think, diminished over time as hopefully people continue to be healthy. But we wanted to make sure that most importantly, our members felt safe. It wasn't enough for us to employ a whole new way of thinking about health and safety. If our members didn't enter the club and feel safe, then we knew that we weren't going to succeed. And the data out of Texas, we're open in 5 clubs now in Texas and 1 in Vancouver. The data is off the charts. So we are surveying members almost every day around how we're managing their expectations from a communication standpoint, and then ultimately how we're delivering from a in-club experience. 97% of members are rating us top box in terms of managing their expectations, and 98% feel safe and feel like we have met or exceeded their expectations as it relates to that in-club experience. So we feel great. That is the most important set of statistics for us, because if our members and our employees feel safe, then we know we're going to be back and back stronger than ever.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that thanks for that. It gives us like a really clear vision of what you're doing now and what you think the sort of the operations and how you're managing the experience for the members will change in the near future. Would love to switch gears a little bit and talk about the brand itself and how you're building the brand. You launched an ambitious campaign, "Make Yourself a Gift to the World." I think it was late last year, early this year. How do you see like a campaign or a message like that living in this environment?
Yeah. So this is a brand, still just a little bit more than a year into my tenure at Equinox. This is a brand that if you followed the campaigns over the last 20 years, the brilliance of what Harvey Spivak, our executive chairman, has sort of pushed for is that the brand has always had a point of view. The brand has always tried to be bold and pioneering, and in support of this high performance lifestyle, we needed to be a premium elevated brand. We look at ourselves more aligned to the Gucci's and the Chanel's than we do competitors like LA Fitness. So I needed to think about how that point of view would manifest itself in a relevant way. Now, if you rewind to the fourth quarter of last year, we brought on Droga 5 to help us think through the communication strategy and the larger marketing strategy in which this would live. And we landed on a very simple insight that if you were your best self, then you would be better for everybody else in your life. So for example, if you feel great about yourself, you're going to be a better father, friend, partner, husband, so on. You'll be less anxious, you'll eat better. And that simple belief enabled us to get to something around self-obsession, which was a little bit, I think, a little bit more prickly, a little bit more interesting.
Yeah.
In some cases, a little bit more off-putting to people who may not be right for the Equinox brand. We're not a mass brand. We're never going to be a mass brand. We are for the people who self-identify, but organizing around this notion of self-obsession and this belief that if you were your best self, wasn't being your best self the most unselfish act of all, because you were being your best self in support of others, that got us to this notion of make yourself a gift to the world. And it launched, I think, very strongly. I think people mostly, most importantly for me, internally, our field group loved it. Our field group was able to have conversations with members and prospective members, talking about what their motivations were, what self-obsession meant to them. Fast forward, we looked at the current situation at the time, just COVID, and decided that self-obsession was probably not where we wanted to be, and was probably, although the insight is still important and still resonant, the campaign was tone deaf in a COVID world. And where we've pivoted, if you were to look at the windows that we just put up in Texas clubs, Vancouver clubs, and we'll be rolling out, we're going to be leveraging our brand tag, which is "It's not fitness, it's life," which has been with us for the better part of the last 20 years.
Wow.
And I think probably more relevant today than ever, because again, our members are looking at this as a no days off situation, but also it's about living your best life. It's about life in focus and making sure that your motivations and goals throughout your life are what you're focused on, and how we can help you achieve that. Our mission is to create possibilities that maximize people's potential. And this notion of "it's not fitness, it's life" is right squarely in the middle of how we'll support that going forward.
Yeah, I mean that's a great it's a great pivot. It's great when you have that equity to build off of such a strong brand. Love to, in the last few minutes before we start taking any questions, would love to sort of shift away from Equinox and just talk about you and your career and what kind of lessons you can impart on us. Love to understand, like, what's been the biggest challenge you think in this transition, because you've had a 30-year career in the agency world, transitioning to client side. What was that like? What were some of the bigger challenges you had in that transition, and what do you think you gained from being an agency person?
It's been a wonderful but challenging first year for a lot of reasons. And personally, it's been an amazing journey, because you think I love these opportunities to accelerate learning. Throughout my career, I've been fortunate enough to have worked with a lot of smart people who have challenged me as I've taken on new opportunities. In this situation, as part of a client organization or part of a brand, I had to learn a business from scratch that feels very nuanced. Like we have fitness clubs. People pay a fee, they come to those fitness clubs, and then we do that again every day. The reality of the situation is I had to learn what it was like to be a part of a field organization, how to manage the operation that we manage, which is unbelievably important in every detail, because we're dealing with people's lives and health and safety and cleanliness. I needed to learn where the brand fit in people's lives and how to be thoughtful about making it more valuable. I had to learn a brand new retail subscription model and what it meant from a churn standpoint, how we would think about retaining our members. So the most challenging thing, which was incredibly fun and continues to be fun, is not just having the burden of being a smart senior marketer going room to room, but as a client inside of a brand like Equinox, which is not a very large organization in corporate, I need to know the business as well as everybody else on the leadership team. And I need to be able to think about how marketing acts in support in some situations of things that we do day in and day out. And then in other situations, how the brand leads us to where we might want to go as we launch new opportunities, whether that be things like virtual personal training or Varus or other things, brand campaigns. So for me, the most challenging but most exciting, even as I go into year 2, is this opportunity to continue the learning curve and to not be feeling too confident about where we head. Obviously, that changes every day, but it's very exciting to be sitting at the table thinking through where the company goes next, not just where the marketing of the company goes next.
Right. What would you say, what accomplishment are you proudest of since you've joined Equinox? It's been about 12 months, you said, yeah?
Yep. Yeah, for me, somebody who is the target audience for Equinox. I'm somebody who lives that, or at least tries to live that high performance life. I spend a fair amount of time working out before COVID in our clubs. I spend a lot of time with Soul, but I also think about nutrition and sleep and regen. And the most rewarding thing for me is putting myself in the mind of our member and then working with our cross capability teams to build things that matter. And I think it's been very interesting to have personal motivation and stake in the value proposition that we try to create every day. And it's been really rewarding to get the organization, which is a very sales driven operational organization, to put the member front and center, to organize everything we do around that member experience, to be thoughtful about the data that we have, whether it be self-reported data, engagement data, or transactional data. We have a closed loop. The challenge is, how do you access and unlock that data in support of making things that people will love more? So that's been the most rewarding part of it, because I personally feel like I have a stake in it, and I will let myself down if I don't make the value proposition great. Forget about the members.
Right. If you were able to give yourself a piece of advice earlier on in your career, what would it be?
Very simply, to listen more, to be more open to learning. As a young person inside of agencies, again, I've been very fortunate to have many mentors and to have people who reached out to take an interest in my career and at times grab me by the back of the collar and tell me what to do. I think as a young person, you're so focused on driving, getting promoted, moving forward, adding value, contributing. But if you slow down a little bit and listen a little bit harder, I think you can accelerate the amount that you learn, and then ultimately you can make an even bigger contribution. So I talk a little bit about patience to different people inside my team and outside of my team. Patience is really, really hard when you're a young person, but having the patience to listen and to be open to learn, I would love to be able to give my young self that advice.
Wow. Well, hopefully some people heard you. I think there's we go to the questions now. I think there's a young, massive fan of yours. His name is Dave Edwards. He's not that young. He's pretty young. He's asking, what would you say is your superpower?
I think I bring I try to bring positivity and optimism to everything. I've been very fortunate to really love what I do for a living. I love every minute of the 30 years on the agency side, and having this passion play now enables me to not have to manufacture that positivity and optimism. So I think if you're fortunate enough to love what you do, that becomes your superpower, at least for me, bringing optimism, positivity to everything we do.
Yeah, it's interesting because you can hear the passion in your voice, and I mean, knowing you personally, I know that you've always been a big fan of Equinox and its brands, especially Soul. What advice would you give to people that aspire to reach that position? Because you really do seem happy, and I've known you for quite a long time, and you've always had this positive disposition. But I think in this moment, it feels different in that, like, you could tell that you're at a place where you really feel passionate about the brand and the business. What kind of advice would you give to people who might not feel like they've reached that point in their career?
I think it depends on where you are in your career. That notion of patience is really important.
Yeah.
Figuring out what parts of your job you love and don't love. Not every job you're going to love, and it's learning to lean into the things that you really enjoy, and really pulling back from the things that you don't. And when you're young, you feel like you need to make money and you need to get promoted. But when you're young, the most important thing is to find the things that really motivate you. And so as a young person, I would tell people to exercise that patience, but to think about perspective as it relates to the things that make you happy, and spend more time with those things than the things that don't. It sounds simple, but I think a lot of people feel like you're in a job for 5 years, 7 years, even 10, and then it's like, well, I can't leave now because then I'm going to sacrifice my title, the money that I have. I think as you iterate, you need to continue to find places where you feel good about the contribution that you're making. And I think if you're happy, everything is better. It goes back to that notion that, making yourself happy, whether it be in a job or any other walk of life, is most important.
Yeah. We have some more questions rolling in here. This is an interesting one, especially for your business around, I think there's so many conversations around what work will look like, with the ability. It's pretty impressive if you think about our ability to sort of continue moving big businesses forward without actually having to be physically present. I think your business model is a little different, right? It's about physical location. It's a big part of your value proposition. So are you guys having conversations about what work will look like in the future? Have you landed anywhere? Are you close to landing anywhere? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
So go back to the sort of organizing principle here, that we're a club/field-based organization. We have 106 clubs with thousands and thousands of people who are out in the field facing off every single day with our members. And from a corporate standpoint, I think there is a fair amount of trepidation as people think about commuting back into the city and what that might look like. So I think there is a bit of fear as to what the future holds. We will be flexible at the outset for sure, making sure that our employees on the corporate side know that their values and point of view are taken into consideration. We've already started to rebuild our corporate headquarters with social distancing in mind. We need to be back in our corporate headquarters, if nothing else, to show our field that we support them in facing off with the constituents that we do business with every single day. So we will be back in our office, I would say earliest, given where New York is, in sometime in July, most likely August or September, but we will be back in our offices. And mostly it's because, we're one team, and we can't have a corporate team living by different rules versus the field and club teams.
Yeah. That sounds fair. Let's see what other questions we can pick from here. There's actually a question around what role, like a high level question around what role data plays in your business. I mean, obviously, just from an outsider, you probably have really robust data on your members. Tell us a little bit about like how it plays a central role, or what role it plays in your business.
Yeah, without going into an extremely detailed explanation, we use data very aggressively across the entirety of all of our marketing initiatives. Profoundly, it impacts our acquisition, right? Thinking about who and how we target, build audiences, where we build them. We've just completed the construction of an attribution model. So for the first time ever, we now know what our return on ad spend is across every channel. So in the past, we didn't know the value of our ad spend on walk-ins or phone-ins, on people who referred other people. And now we have full viewability to an understanding of what that ROAS is by channel and by audience. So it's profoundly changing the way we'll spend money coming out of COVID on the acquisition side. And then every piece of our member engagement is driven by a piece of engagement data, self-reported data, or transactional data. We're doing everything we possibly can to add more value to people's lives. So bringing them more things that are relevant requires that we organize and understand our data. We have a very robust set of platforms that have been in place but have not been fully utilized. So we're now working very hard, whether it be with Adobe or Salesforce or Simon Data, Braze, others, to unlock the value in all of our owned properties. So website, mostly an acquisition channel, and our app, mostly a member channel. So data is a huge focus for how we'll unlock more productivity, but also drive against, we only have really three objectives: acquire more members, keep the members that we have, and generate ancillary revenue associated with things like personal training and Pilates. So we're very focused on using data across that ecosystem.
Thanks for that. That was a good. It wasn't too detailed. It was
just enough for you, huh?
Just enough. Just enough. I think we might have time for one more. I don't know how much you can share, but just in terms of, Equinox pre-COVID had a really aggressive growth plan going into a lot of different territories. Let me look at this question here. Like, is that plan changing? In the hotels, workspaces, et cetera. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys are adjusting, if you are at all?
We're adjusting for sure. Short term will be a little bit less aggressive as it relates to us investing in adjacencies that matter to the lifestyle of our members. The hotel we're fully committed to. So the hotel will open hopefully in early July, if not July 1st. And the hotel's been an amazing through the line experience. We have up to 40% of our hotel guests using the club downstairs. So the hotel matters, and we will continue to expand. I would say expansion might be slowed a bit, but we will continue to lean into hotel. Our Explore, which is curated travel, will be paused probably for the most part for this year. We hope to resume that in 2021. We did 3 trips, which were unbelievably successful. People really loved the fact that they got an Equinox experience as they went to Morocco or other places. So we feel like travel is a very strong adjacency that we're going to continue to lean into. We were thinking through the creation of workspaces for co-working. We'll probably put a pause on that. But the majority of our energies will go into the core of the offering. We'll go into the clubs, the digital businesses, and again, focused on doing everything we can to bring our members back safely and get those core engines rolling again. And once they do, then we'll be back everywhere else, I would imagine.
I think we might be getting.
It looks like Scott has joined the party.
Yeah, I was going to ask one more, but I'm not sure if I have time. I think we're a little over.
No, I think we still have time for one more. So keep the party going, guys.
One more. I'm gonna be selfish. What to make me like a better partner to clients now that you've been on client side for a year? What kind of lessons? What kind of lessons can you give us from now being on that side to be a better sort of agency partner?
I'll give you an anecdote of a piece of advice that I got from a senior client early in my career, and maybe it'll ring true for you and others. And I think that agency people ask for money and opportunity a lot, but oftentimes they're not adding as much value in the core of the assignment that they're given. And as a client, I'm seeing firsthand that the disconnect of asking for more without really going deep and making a contribution in the core is unbelievably misaligned, and I think will create issues going forward. So advice as you come out of COVID, when there will be tremendous pressure on people like you to drive incremental revenue and fast, would be to make sure that you're delivering value inside of the core of the assignments so that you can move to other facets of the business. And that's going to require a deeper dive into the business, probably more time from senior stakeholders who are a little bit more sophisticated in their ability to ultimately understand the business and contribute.
Yeah.
And the agencies need to balance that business contribution and marketing contribution. I would say marketing contribution alone is not enough going forward.
I think we would agree with that. Yep. Thank you, Seth.
You got it, Helder.
Great seeing you.
All right.
Scott.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. I want to pause to reflect on that last sentiment there, Seth, because I think it's really hard if you haven't worked on the brand side and you've only been agency side for your entire career. It's really difficult to understand what it's like inside of the brand, what the challenges are, what the frustrations are, where the opportunities lie. And nobody is going to know the brand or the business as well as the business owners. However, to your point, if you can help them think around corners, if you can help them see what's coming that they don't possibly see, that goes beyond just the marketing, right? From a strategic perspective, look, if you were advising, the taxi industry in 2010, could you have warned them about something like Uber coming along because of what you observed happening with Amazon and one day delivery? Absolutely. It's about being a strategic partner. And, I couldn't help but think as you were talking about the reward, when people show up with the handout and asking for more, the reward will come if the value is demonstrated. I go over the same kind of thing with my 14-year-old and my 16-year-old. You want to raise in your allowance? You want to be able to do more? Then show me more responsibility. Show me you're pitching in without me having to ask for it necessarily. Right. And I think the same kind of mantra applies between brands and agencies.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, all right. Well, thank you so much for those insights. We're going to move on to our next guest, our next set of guests. First up, we have Patrick McLean, who is Senior Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer for Walgreen. He's responsible for the vision, strategic direction, and performance of all Walgreens marketing activities. And I won't get into all of them because there are so many. But previously, Patrick served as the Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer at TD Bank. With full disclosure, TD Bank is a client of mine. Before joining, and he was a CMO at TD, where he was responsible for brand and product marketing as well. He was vice president of digital marketing and brand strategy for Capital One Financial, and also held senior positions at Verizon Communications and Simpatico, which is Canada's largest internet service provider. In addition, we have Davina Kent, who is Senior VP of Client Partnerships. She and her team at Ampersand are changing the way that they partner with Fortune 500 advertisers, empowering them with data and analytics and media platforms. And their desire is to reach consumers while their media consumption habits are rapidly evolving, as they are for all of us. Davina leads Ampersand's Advanced Advertising Forum, where senior marketers get together twice a year to share lessons and collaboration opportunities. Now, prior to Ampersand, Davina previously served as vice president for advanced TV sales at Comcast, where she built the advanced advertising products division into a $100 million business. Prior to that, she was a key player in the success of TiVo, where she built the company's advertising and audience analytics business from 0 to $30 million. Davina, Patrick, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Sky. Wow, that was a big mouthful. Really quick, Patrick. Hi there. Before we dive in, I just want to share just what Ampersand is trying to do in the marketplace, and then I want to focus the rest of the session on you. And I know everyone's excited to hear what you have to say after all the great speakers today. So Ampersand's a data-driven TV and sales and technology company. We enable advertisers to reach audiences in 85 million households in every DMA across 150 networks. And our mission is really to simplify and enhance advertisers' TV efforts, powered by rich viewership insights for planning and measurement at scale. So, Patrick, you've only been on the job for 7 months. Yesterday's your 7-month anniversary, right?
That's right.
About half of the time at Walgreens, we've been in crisis mode. And so, there's been a lot of conversation today in the Brand Innovators event about how different brands are responding. And I would love to just kind of hear, you have a very different viewpoint, being that you've only been on board for 7 months. So you want to talk a little bit about how your transition's been?
Yeah, happy to do that. And first of all, thank you for having me. But I thought this was the Brand Innovators happy hour, so I'm totally confused. Anyway, maybe we can get a drink halfway through. I don't know. Anyway, it's been an amazing ride. It's been, as you mentioned, just over 7 months, and I was just starting to, get at least a little bit comfortable in the role when all of a sudden we got into crisis mode. And, it's really certainly accelerated my learning curve at the company. And obviously, we've made a lot of progress in a short period of time. And maybe just sort of share my experience heading into the crisis, because I think that's probably obviously what folks want to hear most about. Right away, we knew that we were going to be declared an essential service, and so there was really little ambiguity in terms of what role we were going to play and how we had to respond. And I just say the first thing that was just absolutely amazing to me was watching the Walgreens operation capacity and expertise and the strength that the company has as one of the largest retailers, obviously in the country, as well as everything we do from a pharmacy perspective and a health and wellness perspective, and bringing that expertise and operations expertise to the crisis. And obviously with 9,200 locations across the country being declared an essential service in the middle of a very severe health crisis was very complicated. And so very quickly, priority for us was the safety and well-being of our team members and our customers and patients. And so we quickly went to work to implement as much safety precaution as we possibly could in our retail stores. So And you can just imagine everything that went into immediately starting to execute extra cleaning in the store, adjusting hours so that we could have team members cleaning the stores during off hours. We very quickly implemented a lot of communication in the store so that we set expectations on social distancing and how to behave in the store environment to keep everyone safe. And in the early going, you forget that people didn't know what to do. Do I wear a mask? Do I even go outside if I'm in an environment like this? With the social distancing, education and communication was really at its infancy, and so we quickly realized that we had an important role to play in that, and so we executed a lot of communication both within the store and throughout all of our digital channels, and really every touch point that we had to start educating people on what the guidelines were and what expectations that they should have to keep themselves safe. Then over time, we obviously started implementing more significant safety precautions like plexiglass in the stores, at checkout, and for the pharmacy experience. We went from literally, we had team members putting tape on the floors 6 feet apart to set the expectation in the checkout line and in the pharmacy line. We then got more robust execution in that regard. So just a real intense operational activation in early going. And then, as time went on, then we started to experience the even back into the supply chain and in the store, all of the shortages of some key categories. So we were literally, like a lot of other retailers, really everybody, things like paper product in the store, cleaning supplies, other even health products were hard to keep in supply on the shelves. And so even back into our supply chain and all the operations to try to get as much inventory into the stores as possible for these essential products became a real challenge. And so just watching the brand and watching the company really activate was an amazing learning curve for somebody new to the organization. And it made me just exceptionally proud of the organization and the brand and all of our team members who really stayed committed and stayed focused on the mission at hand, which was to serve all of the communities in which we operate and do everything we could to keep people safe and also continue to provide the essential services that we do throughout the country. So that was really the first phase of it, if that makes sense. It's a very interesting start. And then if you'd like, I can just sort of continue the different phases, or if you've got questions on that, I can certainly go into some more detail.
Yeah, no, I want you to continue. Just one thing though, some of the things that you guys implemented, it sounded like you already had some of this in progress, right? Some of the things around changing the business model. So, if you could highlight what are things, because I think it's people want to hear, were there things you already had in progress that this just expedited, or, did you have to just come up with it new? I think it's probably a hybrid, but.
Yeah, it's great. And that sort of gets us into the second phase of this for Walgreens and for the brand. And, just a few things that we did. And a lot of it was really just you're right, we had things in the pipeline, we had innovation, and we had products that we were developing, and we really learned to accelerate the implementation and the rollout of those services. So a couple of examples of that. We have a partnership with Postmates for home delivery, and we were in the process of rolling it out state by state in a very measured way. And almost overnight, we went to a national rollout of that partnership with Postmates. We had always had this concept of delivering retail products through our drive-through, which is obviously first a very convenient way for people to interact with the pharmacy. You don't have to get out of your car, and if you've got kids, you got to drag them out of your car to go into the pharmacy. It's obviously another convenient way that you can access that service. But we had always contemplated putting retail products available through drive-through as well. So the idea is you're coming through for your pharmacy experience, and you can also pick up retail products at the same time. Well, within 2 weeks, we had rolled that out. We started with a subset of our products, and now you can pretty much get anything through the Walgreens drive-through, both from the pharmacy perspective and the retail perspective. And so this was just a recognition. One of the obviously key roles that we play as a marketing brand organization is being really close to the customer and being the voice of the customer. And so we knew, obviously, all of our insight was telling us that, we've got to get more into omni-channel experiences. We needed to, leverage the strength that we have in retail, but I think we're arguably behind in the digital space. And so we needed we knew we needed to make those investments, and they were in the pipeline. But as we started to keep a pulse of what was happening during the early stage of the crisis, we knew we had no time to wait. And so what really then happened was we got into a real agile, a really forced decision making to happen more quickly. It forced us to make really bold moves in terms of resourcing and mobilizing the whole company on behalf of the customer. And it was really almost like a cultural transformation that went on during that period for us. And I think great learning for us in terms of maybe how we need to behave a little bit more in an agile way as a company. We've got to streamline our delivery, and we've got to streamline the connectivity between what we're seeing in the market, what we're seeing the customer expectations are, and then being much better and more nimble at responding and adapting to those changing customer behaviors. Another example would be our Prescription Savings Club, which is a great vehicle for people to get savings on for a wide variety of drugs that are available through that program. Again, we were rolling it out state by state and piloting it. We just recently went national with it. Again, it was a real good example of taking something that we were being, I think, relatively and probably overly conservative with. And then deciding, boy, given the market conditions, given what consumer behavior is looking like, here's something we've got to amplify and roll out really quickly. And then from a brand perspective, I'll just maybe one thing, and I'll pause. What was really amazing was we've been doing a lot of work on brand strategy and what does it need to look like in the next phase of the Walgreens brand. And so just organically, what we saw was some of the things that we've been highlighting as the strengths and the reasons to believe for the Walgreens brand just organically started to happen. So I'll give you a couple of examples of that. I mean, the first really is convenience and getting to a more omni-channel notion of convenience. And so I already gave you a couple of examples of how we've done that. We're also rolling out nationally curbside pickup. So we're really quickly activating. I mean, it's not like we pulled out the brand strategy and said, oh, well, now that we're in this crisis, let's go do this. It just started to happen organically.
No break.
Yeah, the second example of that was expertise, right? We have a lot of expertise embedded in our company, and the role of the pharmacist in the community. Pharmacist plays in terms of educating people. In a lot of ways, people interact with their pharmacist as much, if not more, than their doctor or other healthcare providers. And so we wanted to unlock that. And then just organically, we started creating content that was right at the heart of health expertise. We did a content series called Ask a Pharmacist, where we took all of the primary questions that we were getting in stores and in our call centers and our social channels, and we created content with a couple of our pharmacists to be able to address those questions and get our expertise out throughout the crisis in a pretty meaningful way. So it was great to see the brand activate, our product development team activate, our operations activate. And I think we're just exceptionally proud of everything that we've done through this, through the crisis. And hopefully our customers and patients are getting the benefit of all of these quick turn investments that we've made. So I'll pause there for a sec.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fascinating that so new to the business, and having to move the whole company forward and change the culture. How, I think, there's a lot of marketers on the call right now. How is your team structured? I mean, how were you able to pivot and go so quickly, and what partners helped you during this time?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, and I think we moved to I just throw the term agile out there, and it's probably an overused term, but the content turnaround times have, in my view, have changed forever. I mentioned the pharmacist content series. We put a lot of content on our website and our mobile app through our social channels. We were turning around content in a matter of hours, and even within the confines of the world that we live in, where everybody's virtual. And then when we got a little bit further into the crisis, and even more recently, as we started to come out of the crisis, everybody, you can't stop producing work and you can't stop producing content. And so we had to rapidly adapt to be able to still do our storytelling, still get the message out about everything that is going on at Walgreens. And so, a good example of that, hopefully everybody's seen our recent work on graduation celebration. And obviously the photo business is a big business for us, and was really struggling throughout this period. So there was a real business imperative behind that. Obviously we're a big destination for gifts and banners and celebratory pictures and cards and things of that nature. And so there was a business need to restart that business. And then we also just had this insight where, what we saw was the trend of where the early going people were really, scared, a lot of anxiety. We started to see a change in the tone, and people were becoming more optimistic and more positive. And we just felt like there was this moment around graduation where we could celebrate the challenge that everybody's gone through, and just this real, deep insight around, wow, like all these kids are not going to get the opportunity to do that graduation moment that you've worked so hard for, whether it's high school or college or graduating from one year to another. And then the other insight was, man, think of the parents who have invested in their kids, and everybody's got this vision of their kid graduating high school or college, and they're going to miss out. And we knew that there was just this cultural moment that we wanted to both celebrate, and also we had a business reason to get into it. And so our partner WPP and our agency relationship with them, we all came together, and we quickly got to this idea of, let's create a new and modern and celebratory version of the song Pomp and Circumstance. And let's find an artist that's willing to partner with us and do this in the environment that we're in. So we quickly worked together with Bibi Rexa and her team. And within 8 days, we had gone from the idea on what we were going to do to being live in video, including linear TV and digital TV, and she produced a song basically within a 36 to 48 hour period. And then we literally, we didn't, aside from her shooting herself at her home to the song, we literally shot nothing, and created what I think was a really celebratory moment. I'm happy to report that it's driving all the business that we were expecting it to drive, and it's been just a really positive thing for us, because to produce a TV spot or a video spot, the lead time is typically 15 to 16 weeks, and there's so many people that get involved on the production side, and so I think I'm really proud of our team, and really proud of the relationship that we had with the WPP team that worked on that, because it was really, I mean, it's an experience that we'll remember for the rest of our lives. But the learning there as well is, well, wait a minute, if we can produce this level of quality content on a very specific business objective and brief in 8 days and get it live, because we also like dramatically compressed all of the trafficking and worked with all of the media partners that were part of the experience. We were we worked closely with iHeartRadio because it was an audio experience as well. So we very quickly put together an execution with iHeart, and we just really compressed the whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
And we're able to deliver in a really compressed amount of time. And so the question I think for all of us is, well, why can't we do that when we get out of this, right? So I just think it's what we've been through has changed our mindset. And I think the whole industry needs to change its mindset just as a result of everything we've been through.
Well, I love that because I think my audio is. Do you hear me clearly? It
Yeah, you're doing okay. Yeah.
Okay. I think what I love about that, the quick turn on creative and everything, is that we're highly focused on working with brands to help them reach different audiences and localize their messaging and everything. And given you guys are supporting and in almost every community around the U.S., I think what we've seen as marketers look towards more customization by region, especially as things evolve across the U.S. and are different. And what are your thoughts around? I know you guys, we've worked together on your Feel More Like You campaign, and can you talk a little bit about targeting and measurement? I mean, you had it even in your bio, so I know it's important to you, and I know your background at TD Bank and Cap One, it was important there. Can you just talk a little bit about your approach to targeting and maybe how that's changing or staying the same? Yeah,
it's great, and I think there's a couple components. One is I think the planning cycle has changed, and then there's also, I think we've got a need for way more flexibility, both in our targeting and then also in just even we'll talk about the upfronts coming up and how that might look, but. To your specific question, I mean, our strategy is best articulated around mass personalization, and our perspective is that that brands now need to activate on both a mass scale, but also on a hyper personalized level. And so technologies like yours and many others are starting to enable brands to be able to activate on a mass personalization agenda, like the journey that we're on. And you're absolutely right. Think about like even just the grad example, and we're just rolling out some work on summer, and they're trying to transition also to retail products and retail themes that we have in the summer period. And the country's in a very different place right now in different parts of the country, and graduation happens at different times in different parts of the country, and summer happens early or summer happens all the time in certain parts of the country. And so the ability to actually be really, really precise on where these executions are showing up in media based on the local and even hyper local dynamics across the country. I think what we've been through highlights the real need for that. Even things like New York is just barely crawling back out of back to business. Chicago's the same, which is where I am now. Things like Las Vegas, which is a big market for us, is just barely reopening. And so, being able to run and be able to have flexibility across the media landscape so that you can heavy up in markets that are less constrained from a COVID perspective, and then have different messaging rolling in different markets at different times. I mean, that's just a real simple mass example of what personalization actually is. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to get to a place where we're delivering versions of content to you based on the data and what we're seeing about you. And so I think the dawn of this mass personalization approach is upon us. It's been, it's like that example of we've always had these things that are in the pipeline or on the roadmap, and we've got a vision for it. But in my mind, this is just what we've been through is just going to accelerate all of that, and I think we're already seeing that in terms of the approach that we're starting to take.
So what do you think will stick, right? I mean, I think everyone's talked about like their prediction. I mean, so much has changed. I personally love the curbside pickup, and I've been and love watching some of my favorite restaurants be really creative about creating family meals and mixed drinks to go and things like that. I mean, the way we work, talk about a little bit what you think your prediction for the future and what remains the same.
Well, there's no question that that safety and just all the precautions that everyone is taking, that's not going away anytime soon. And so I think there's going to be a consciousness of how do I protect myself and my family from an employer perspective. How do I keep my team members as safe as possible? I mean, that's going to be with us for a long time, if not indefinitely. And so I think we're in that new world. The other thing for me, and a part of that, is the omni-channel. And again, I'm probably using far too many buzzwords, but the omni-channel nature of how people interact with brands is here to stay. It was already happening. The expectation that I can do business with your brand on my own terms. If I don't want to go into your store, then I'm not going into your store. So if you want my business, you need to create other ways, delivery, drive-through, other ways, curbside pickup you mentioned. All of these ways are going to be the complements of the future to a retail experience. There are still those moments when people are going to want to go in and are going to want to interact with a human, and that's not going away either. So in my view, the role that brands like ours will play in the future is creating a multi-touch, multi-option experience to be able to access our products and services. So that's not going away. And I think we're going to have to invest in, as I mentioned, we implemented these things in a pretty rapid way, and now we've got to go back and make them operationally, enterprise grade. And there's a lot of duct tape and bubble gum in the background making all this work right now. So we're going to have to automate and digitize and do all the things to make them permanent. And I think that's probably true of a lot of retail and service-oriented and health-oriented brands, because you're going to want to, if I don't want to go, I want to think about a physician visit. You're going to want to be able to do that remotely. If you look at the numbers of that, they've skyrocketed over the past couple of months, and so that's not going away. So I think just the expectations have changed for good. I hope we're going to get to a point where we don't have to wear masks all the time, and we can start shaking hands and hugging again, and just feeling like we're getting back to some sort of normalcy. But we're always going to have this as a society, we're just going to have this I don't know, this check and balance in the back of our mind to say, I just want to be a little extra careful, and so I think that's here to stay. And then remote work, which you mentioned, I think we've learned tons about how to get stuff done without having to actually physically be in the same place as people. Again, I still think there's something human about wanting to be together, and I don't think that's going to go away. I don't think we're going to suddenly be a remote and digital society. I think it's going to be a balance. I think, again, people want to be together, and so there's going to be times when you're going to want to go in and meet and have a physical whiteboard or whatever it is, and sit across the conference room from somebody. But knowing that you can do it without having to do that, I think, is a really powerful. And some of the folks that worked on the BB Rexha spot that I mentioned earlier, I haven't even met them.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people you haven't met yet in person.
Well, exactly. Well, think of that, right? And you're working, you're producing work, and you haven't even met these people. And of course, you have on some level, but you've never actually physically interacted with them. So it's an amazing world that we're going to transition to here. And I think back to the customer, one of the most important things is for us to keep getting the insight and the data and listening to customers, and the more we can understand, the more we can adapt our strategy. And I think that's the other reality, is that the idea of setting strategy and then, okay, here's our strategy for the next 3 to 5 years. I'm not sure that's going to be our reality either. I think it's going to be we're going to enter a period of great adaptivity and the ability to pivot and the ability to listen and respond. And I think we're going to enter this period of responsive brands are going to win. And I think if you can find the right way to be in touch with your customers and be ready for this age of responsive brands, I think it's going to be. I think that's the strategy moving forward.
Absolutely. So that, look, I want to talk today about being authentic and purpose-driven leadership and how important that is during these times. Our CEO takes that seriously. She's also a new CEO, and I think she's been really focused on creating an open culture so that employees feel have space to share their stories, and has like a regular weekly coffee with our teams to keep the dialogue and the connections going. What kind of things are you doing to keep that connection and keep people motivated with your team?
Yeah, a few things there. I mean, the great thing about our culture and our brand is that our team members really are our heroes, and they are core to who we are and core to our DNA. And I can tell you that even organically, our team members have maintained a really committed and really positive attitude, and are really self-motivated, because if you think about the role of the pharmacist in the community, I mean, the pharmacist is like really core and at the center in a lot of ways. And so they take that responsibility really seriously, and they love it. They love what they do, and otherwise they wouldn't be pharmacists. And so they've just organically and naturally been very positive and really driven through this period. And we've supported them, with everything that we can for them to be able to perform that service in the community. Same thing with front of store. There's an energy within our company and even within our retail teams that they were highly motivated, self-motivated to just continue to deliver for the customers that came in. And in a lot of ways, what they were doing was just as essential as the pharmacy, because people need essentials. They need they need to pick stuff up. People, one of the unique value propositions I think that Walgreens has had is it's really easy to get in and out, right? So in some ways, unlike some of the bigger format stores, what we saw was a lot of people gravitating to a Walgreens because it's really convenient and easy to get in and out of the experience. And if you need to speak to the pharmacist and you're comfortable going into the store, then you can come in, you can get in and out really efficiently. We got everything you need, and so there was this real sort of purpose to the retail part of the business too that people gravitated toward. Mm-hmm. The other thing that we've just been through, which is I think a really interesting use case here, is we've just been through Red Nose Day, and for those of you not familiar with Red Nose Day is a partnership that we have with Comic Relief and NBC and others. And we've been doing it for 5 years, and it's really driven with a mission to eliminate child poverty throughout the world, and particularly in local communities within the U.S. for this particular execution. And the fun part of that is, we've been the exclusive retail partner with them for 5 years, And one of the anchor executions is we sell millions of red noses that people put on their nose and to signify their support for the cause. And then all of the proceeds go to fighting child poverty. Well, this year we couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Because obviously, if you're telling people not to touch their face and they're wearing masks, and then you're also selling red noses, it didn't make any sense. So somewhere in a Walgreens distribution center, there are literally, I think it's 8 or 9 million red noses, which hopefully we'll be able to get back to it this year. So anyway, my point is that's always been, for the 5 years we've been doing it, it's been a real motivator and a really fun thing for our team members to do. And we had to get really creative on how we wanted to keep it because, first of all, I mean, child poverty, there's no more important time for that cause right now. You can imagine what's going on, and particularly in some of our struggling urban centers around just people being able to feed their kids. And so really important cause that we wanted to support. And we had this real challenge, which is, well, like the big thing we were doing was selling these noses. We can't sell these noses. And so what we did was we actually went totally digital. And so you could go onto Walgreens.com, you could go directly to Nose Day website, and you could donate as little as $1, and you would get these, you would unlock basically a digital red nose filter on Facebook, Instagram, Snap, and you could do, basically like a shot of yourself wearing, virtual shot of you wearing the red nose, and then the idea was use that to spread the word and
I love that. So
other
cool.
people. So it was great, very, very successful. We raised $14+ million for a terrific cause, which was great, especially given the circumstances. And our employees and our team members just went nuts. It was even more successful, I think, because people were so proud that we were continuing the tradition of it. Thousands and thousands of posts from our team members with their red noses, spreading the word. And so that was a highly motivating thing for us to have done as well. And just kept the energy level because it was really, I think, a good lightning rod for the purpose that we have on trying to be as committed as we possibly can in the communities that we serve. So anyway, lots of examples.
Yeah, the other thing that I thought was really cool is as people are challenged with how to talk to their kids about everything that's going on, and you guys invested and did a partnership with Sesame Street, right? You want to talk a little bit about that? Because I think
we did, and that was very powerful for us because there's a lot of things that we do in the category of just helping kids, and we're very passionate about supporting kids in the community. And you're absolutely right. The issue that we were tackling with Sesame Workshop was, how do you tell your kids about what's going on, and how do you educate them about things that they should be doing to protect themselves? And it's like when you tell your kid to go wash their hands, the first thing that the kid goes, I don't want to wash my hands. And, they're reluctant to listen to their parents. And so what we tried to do was use all of the great characters and content that Sesame has at their disposal. And we partnered up with them on how do we educate people on, particularly kids, how do we give parents tools to talk to their kids about what was going on? How do we talk to kids about how to take care of themselves? And then how do we also use their platform to celebrate frontline workers and, all of the frontline workers that, are really the heroes. And, so we did great content in partnership with them, celebrating not only pharmacists, but other frontline workers. And then, giving them every opportunity to bring their characters to the forefront of helping kids understand what's going on. So that was another one. The other shout out I'd give is to Cheddar. We had another terrific partnership with Cheddar. Again, we created a whole series of educating through their platform, topics of significant interest throughout the crisis. Again, we made our chief medical officer, Dr. Kevin Ban, and our head of our pharmacy group, Rena Shaw, available, and along with a number of other pharmacist experts on their platform to be interviewed or create content to inform the Cheddar audience of things that were relevant in the health and wellness space throughout the whole crisis. So that was another very, very good partnership, and they did a great job, helping us again create rapid turn content, adapting. It's not like we had a whole editorial and content plan mapped out. We made it very adaptable so that week to week we could adjust what we did with them based on the the information and the insight that we had at the moment. So.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I'm out. I'm not allowed to ask any more questions. I'm going to look and see what our audience has. I have quite a few questions coming through here. So let's see. So I think one of them is about, there's a lot about media marketing, a lot of questions about, people wanting a little bit more understanding. Can you describe your marketing mix? What digital channels, things like that. And then there's another one around love the storytelling. How are the stories found? So kind of media and creative. So.
Yeah. So on the media side, I'm trying to get away from the this idea of there are traditional channels and there are digital channels, and what is your mix of traditional and digital? I think more and more every channel is a modern channel, and while there's still some some channels that need to adapt, I think about it holistically, and I think about it more on the level of like, how much precision marketing am I doing? How much precision media am I doing? And how much of my media is not as precise as I would like? Obviously, there's degrees of precision, but we've significantly we measure how much of it is in that category of precision, and we've seen a 20% increase, not a 20% increase, but 20% of our media budget has shifted to more precise media over the last 6 months. Okay, so we are looking for opportunities, as we talked about earlier, to move even more of our dollars to channels that have precision technology and the ability to target. The other thing that I think you're going to see over time is channels and media partners who are able to unlock the value of our first-party data are going to get priority, because the more integrated we can get in terms of our first-party data and the media platform's first-party data, the more precise we can get. And so I think we're in this, I described it as mass personalization, and precision media is a big part of the evolution there. And so it's less about, are you spending more in out of home or TV or display digital? For me, it's all, is it precise? And then it becomes, how is it performing relative to the other ways that I'm using precision to reach our customers? So that's the media answer. The storytelling answer is like, great stories come from everywhere. I mean, we have stories that have come from team members in the field. We have stories that come from agency ideation. We have stories that come from our pharmacists, and we're agnostic as to where great stories come from. Our job, I think, as marketers now is to curate as much as it is to create. And the way that we can get to mass personalization, in my mind, is delivering content at scale. And if you're talking about content at scale and being able to serve a different set of content to a different audience in a different channel based on what is the right thing to do, I'll take stories and content from anywhere I can get it, as long as it's relevant and I can use it in an efficient way to reach a decent set of our customers. So that'd be my answer.
Yeah, I love the first party data, thing. And I mean, a little bit about that in terms of, audiences? Like, how do you think about, there's this shift from Nielsen to kind of richer audiences, obviously powered by your first party data where possible. How do you think about audiences and the audiences that you need to serve, especially now that you have some, it sounds like, more flexibility for serving different creative to these different audiences?
I think the whole space is evolving, as you alluded to there, and it's, I don't have a crystal ball in terms of how it's all gonna pan out. I do think that the role of first party data in audience mapping and in getting to a audience of one, which is the ideal state, is going to be critical. I mean, everything that's gone on with the CCPA and the elimination of cookies, and just the role that third-party data is going to play is going to be diminished, in a rapid way. And so the brands that have first-party data, the audience platforms that are able to unlock the value of it and help brands create audiences that are most relevant to their strategy and their business, are the ones that are going to win. And it's going to be less about a gross rating point. It's going to be less about impressions. It's going to be less about all that. It's going to be much more about I'm trying to reach Davina. How do I reach Davina in the best way where she's having a terrific experience with my brand and she's becoming more engaged, and as an outcome she's buying more and she's more loyal and all that stuff. So that's where it's all going. And which platforms win? I think it's the ones that I described are most able to unlock the true value of the customer data that brands have.
Mm-hmm. Well, you keep Davina happy by keeping the curbside pickup, because the more
good to know.
the less I spend.
We're doing some one-to-one customer insight work here right now, so that's good.
Yeah. So one more question here. It's back to the you being agile with your creative needs. And you mentioned that WPP, obviously your agency of record, was an important piece to that. The question is, and it sounds like you're working with other partners like Cheddar and Sesame Street, about creating content. So does anything change in the way that you work with your agency based on that, or anything goes in-house? I mean, that's kind of what the question is trying to get at.
Yeah, so we have a significant in-house agency, which was also part of the process. I probably should have given them as much of a shout out as I did the external agency. I mean, it's really, we have an agency of one model where we have internal folks, we have the WPP agency that we work with. I think my own personal philosophy on this is that when working with media partners, the best path forward is when everybody's working collaboratively. And so it's let's get Google, the MediaCom folks in the WPP world, and my own team working holistically on a brief. And so it's no longer this, waterfall-y type process to, for media partners to come back to our media agency with ideas, and then they vet them, and then, we figure out how to pick the ones that win. I think the ones that win are when we're actively engaged together to create a concept, create a mashup of media and creative, because it's the other thing going on right now is it's not like you could do your creative process over here, you do your media process over here. It's all one. Mm-hmm. And so the more that we can do that, and my own personal philosophy is, listen, if media partners can come to the table and be engaged with us directly, it's just more smart people working on our brand. And so how can that be a bad thing? Now, there's limits. So I'm going to get 1,000 emails after this.
Yeah.
So there's limits, and particularly in the early going, we got to pick our spots. But but conceptually, that to me, you have to create an ecosystem around you. It's got to be your own team. It's got to be agency. It's got to be technology, and it's got to be media partners and other content providers that can help complement what you have at the core. And so that's my own philosophy on how to build a great marketing ecosystem for a brand. And that's what we're trying to execute.
Well, I have some time maybe for another question. So you mentioned you're going to get a lot of calls from people. So, and Seth talked a little bit before this about, advice for vendors and partners and everything. So, any words of advice for anyone that's got I think his was come to me with ideas. Don't just try and come to me with an ask. So anything for the vendors and partners that are on the call that you.
Yeah, well, Seth's a good friend of mine and he's a smart guy too. So I listen to Seth. And I don't know if he's still on, but hey, Seth, I think that's right. I think too many times you get emails where they've taken somebody else's name and they put your name in, and sometimes the color of the font is actually different because you've got your templates and then you change it, and you're going straight to junk mail. I'm sorry. And then the other thing I would say is hi, we're a full service agency that does blah 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 blah. The standard form stuff. You're going straight to junk mail. I'm sorry, you are. So Seth's absolutely right. Have a point of view, have an idea, have some sort of reference point, and think about the way in that is going to be top of mind for either me as a CMO, or if you're approaching folks on the media team or the brand team, whatever it is. Just take the time and put the effort in to really make your communication thoughtful and purposeful, and either have an idea or at least a point of view. And then you've got a much, much better chance of direct engagement. I would say, I just try to find the right level to come in. I mean, obviously emailing the CMO, if you're a smaller media partner, is honestly a bit of a long shot. And I don't mean that in any kind of disrespectful way. It just is. And so just try to find the right entry point to get attention. Obviously, the agency still plays a massive role in bringing partners to us. So I wouldn't go obviously to an all direct business development strategy, but that's the main point. I mean, I think it's just to have a really thoughtful form of communication and try to find the right person, not just have a list of CMOs and start spamming CMOs. That's not a likely successful strategy for you. So
sounds like personalization, right?
Personalization, that's right. That's personalization.
We can end on that. I think Scott's joined us again. Thanks so much, Patrick. It's been great chatting with you.
Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun. And is happy hour next, or what are we doing now?
I'm ready for a cocktail right now.
All right, happy hour it is. Have a great weekend, everybody, and thanks for the time.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both for wrapping up the day for us. I think it was an instructive conversation. And, I've been here since 10 a.m. Eastern time. That's 6 hours on the clock now. I think I've earned this. I don't know about you. Just wanted to sum up here. This is always the hardest part of the day, is taking all of these amazing insights that we've gotten from these leaders, from these educators, from these people in the brand innovators community that have been so generous with their time and their thoughts. To me, as trite as it may sound, it's about change, and I don't want to just gloss over that, because that could be a throwaway term. I'm thinking about the changes that we experience not only as brands, but the changes we're experiencing as leaders. What it's asking us to dig down within ourselves to showcase for our customers, for our employees, even for the people in our lives. And the change that it's coming about for us personally. There's a lot that we're having to grapple with right now. And, we see an acceleration of change, an acceleration of processes that are being completely upended. Patrick was just talking about how content that used to take days to get developed is being developed in the course of just hours. And I think that's important. We're seeing a whole decade worth of transformation happening within a few short weeks or months. But at the same time, this level of change, this level of impact that it's having on us requires us to take care of ourselves, to take care of what we need, if it's a pause, if it's reflection, if it's time off. Many of us, I think it was Essie who talked about not having a day off and working harder than ever before, right? It's so important to take that time to care for ourselves because then we can care for others. It's just like being on an airplane and they say, put your mask on before helping others. We need to do the same thing as leaders and as brands. And if we can do the things that help us understand where we're going, that help us make more insights out of the data that are constantly presenting to ourselves, then we'll get to that point where we've got more personalized interactions. And that's the last point I want to dwell on is that personalization. Yes, we all think about that holy grail of one-to-one communication. And I think what Patrick talked about in terms of fine tuning your message to the right person within the organization is so important. But to ask brands to do that at scale is going to require a lot of technology change and a lot of change on the part of consumer behavior. How can we model that? Well, I think one of the things we talked about midway through the day today in terms of being more vulnerable and being careful with each other and showing our authentic selves. I think these things, personalization, vulnerability, acceleration, pausing, these are the things that we need to help drive effective change. Well, I hope you'll join me here or join the Brand Innovators team, who has done an amazing job today, by the way. If you get a chance to talk to our production and content team at Brand Innovators, please give them a kudos. They are going to be here on Monday for Extraordinary Times Call for Extraordinary Thinking, the new media plan. We'll be hearing from brands such as Pandora, Essence, Publicis, and Unilever. I hope you have a great rest of your day, a great weekend. Don't forget to take care of yourself. Thanks, and I'll see you on the internet.